Chapter 32:16. The Descent of Calamity. The better choice Yi Xian was referring to was the other two treasures he had obtained from the exchange store not long ago in the Death Star Vortex: the Avicii Origin Crystal and the Calamity Dragon Pill. Avicii Origin Crystal. Energy crystal formed from the accumulation of endless Avicii 9 hells. Grade: Starry Sky Epic Rank. Grade: Pure and Flawless. Calamity Dragon Pill. Refined according to an ancient recipe, a miraculous pill essential for the transformation of a flood dragon into a dragon. Grade: Starry Sky Epic Rank. Grade: Excellent with slight flaws. Currently, Yi Xian had already opened the path to the evolution of the human body and could continue to cultivate like before. However, the energy from the star core would no longer be used to increase the power of the void cave technique. Instead, it would be used to temper his body and increase the power of his blood and qi. However, there were many other ways to achieve this kind of physical evolution besides the energy from the star core source. For example, the strange fruits borne by some strange trees in the universe could also be consumed if they had the effect of tempering one's meridians and bones. They would also have the effect of improving one's vitality. Of the two treasures that Yi Xian had exchanged for from the system's exchange store, the Avicii Origin Crystal was prepared for the Heavenly Fallen Bow's divine ability. It shouldn't have any effect on the increase of his physical body's vitality, but it could increase the power of Yi Xian's divine ability, which was also beneficial to his combat strength. As for the Calamity Dragon Pill, it was prepared for his demonic dragon bloodline, and the improvement of his bloodline was actually the growth and transformation of his vitality. Therefore, according to Yi Xian's estimation, if this Calamity Dragon Pill really had a miraculous effect, his current level of vitality would definitely be able to achieve a metamorphosis, and it shouldn't be a problem for him to advance to the second-order black hole. After pondering for a while, Yi Xian decided to consume the Calamity Dragon Pill and absorb the Avicii Origin Crystal at the same time. This was because there was no conflict. The Avicii Crystal was a crystal. Yi Xian could not directly consume it like an elixir. He could only hand it over to the devouring system, and let the system absorb its energy and channel it into the small golden bow suspended above his knowledge sea. There was no need for Yi Xian to interfere or pay too much attention to this. He could completely immerse himself in refining the medicinal power of the Calamity Dragon Transforming Pill. After making the decision, he immediately took out the two treasures. He threw the Avicii Metacrystal to the devouring system in his body, and the Calamity Dragon Pill into his mouth and swallowed it immediately. After that, Yi Xian went to the courtyard outside and sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. The reason why he didn't stay indoors was because he was worried that the demonic dragon's phantom image would appear behind him again. He was afraid that the aura would soar into the sky and tear the entire house apart. Ding! Congratulations to host for discovering Avicii Crystal. Would you like to absorb its energy immediately? At this moment, the familiar sound of the system notification rang out. Yi Xian immediately gave a confirmation. At the same time, he instructed the engulfing system to directly inject the energy into the small golden bow after the absorption was complete. Then, he focused on the matter of absorbing the medicinal power of the Calamity Dragon Transforming Pill. This pill was miraculous. It melted in his mouth and turned into an invisible hot energy that directly rushed into Yi Xian's knowledge sea and entered the black gold dragon scale. Boom! Roar! As Yi Xian expected, as the invisible hot medicinal power of the Calamity Dragon Transforming Pill rushed into the black gold dragon scale, the originally silent dragon scale was immediately activated. A surge of majestic demonic dragon pressure surged out, and at the same time, a clear dragon roar rang out. A phantom image of a demonic dragon covered in mysterious black gold dragon scales appeared behind Yi Xian and soared thousands of meters into the sky. Fortunately, the starry sky energy shield covering the entire Triumph City was several thousand meters in height. Otherwise, the energy shield would have been shaken by such a strike. But even so, all the masters in Triumph City were still alarmed. They all turned their heads to look in the direction of Yi Xian's central city castle, their faces filled with amazement and shock. The demonic dragon was a creature that could no longer be found in this world and only existed in ancient legends. Although what they saw at this moment was only a phantom image of a demonic dragon and not its real body, it was enough to prove that Yi Xian's body contained some kind of ancient demonic dragon inheritance. How could it not cause one's heart to surge with emotion and be indescribably excited? As for the outside world, Yi Xian didn't care. This was Triumph City, the safest place for him. Even if he didn't set up any defenses while cultivating, he didn't need to worry about any danger. At the same time, as the power of the black gold dragon scales was fully activated, the phantom image of the demonic dragon appeared behind Yixian and soared into the sky. The invisible heat that represented the medicinal efficacy of the tribulation dragon transforming pill, after being converted by the black gold dragon scales, was quickly regurgitated and rushed out like a raging river from the black gold dragon scales. As soon as it entered Yixian's knowledge sea, this raging river instantly exploded, turning into countless tiny streams that radiated out of Yixian's knowledge sea and began to nourish Yixian's every cell, every inch of his flesh, blood, and bone marrow. Walala! From this moment on, Yixian once again sensed the fine chains wrapped around the countless cells in his body. These chains represented the shackles of the human body's potential, imprisoning power. This time, the feeling was even clearer. Moreover, as the countless streams of the tribulation dragon transforming pill flowed past, the countless shackles that densely covered every cell in Yixian's body actually began to emit strange clanking sounds, as if they were being pulled and torn apart by an invisible force. An indescribable sharp pain suddenly came, and Yixian felt as if his entire body was being ruthlessly cut by countless invisible knives. This was the effect of the tribulation dragon transforming pill's medicinal efficacy pulling at the shackles, causing the transformation and evolution of his flesh and blood cells. The more intense the pain, the more obvious the medicinal efficacy of the pill was. Once this transformation and evolution was completed, the shackles of Yixian's flesh and blood cells would be torn apart even more, and the power of his blood and qi would soar. Understanding this, Yixian immediately became excited. At this moment, it could be said that he was feeling both pain and happiness. This feeling was too overwhelming, and it was indescribable. At the same time, the 9 netherworlds' fiendish energy of the Avicii origin crystal had also been completely absorbed by the devouring system. The entire Avicii origin crystal could be said to be of perfect quality. After the energy was absorbed, the crystal directly disappeared, leaving not a single trace behind. It turned into a pure black energy with a faint blood-red tinge, and was directly injected by the devouring system into the small golden bow suspended above Yixian's knowledge sea. Screech! Following the injection of this pure black 9 netherworlds fiendish energy, the small golden bow suspended above Yixian's knowledge sea was also completely activated. An incomparably tyrannical roar resounded, and behind Yixian's back, where the demonic dragon phantom had just dissipated, in an instant, another terrifying phantom appeared, reaching a height of 1,000 meters. Countless experts in Triumph City once again turned their heads to look at the phantom behind Yixian. Their bodies trembled, and they felt a chill. Chapter 32:17. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The heavenly eye reappears, screech. This screech was filled with boundless chilliness and murderous intent. It came from the primordial Yaksha. The 1,000-meter-tall illusory figure that appeared behind Yixian was a sinister Yaksha with demon wings on its back and a giant golden bow in its hand. It was exactly the same as the primordial Yaksha that Yixian saw in the Heaven's Fall Bow's inheritance. No, there was still a difference. The only difference was the energy arrow that appeared on the giant golden bow in his left hand. In that epic battle, even the primordial Yaksha's true form had gradually drawn the bow to its fullest. The Heaven's Fall arrow that soared into the sky was entirely golden, just like the Heaven's Fall bow. When Yixian used the Heaven's Fall bow's ability, the Heaven's Fall arrow that appeared on the bowstring was the same. However, at this moment, the heavenly meteor arrow that was condensing on the primordial Yaksha's bow behind Yixian. Although the main color was also brilliant gold, there were clearly some black and red patterns within the dense brilliant gold that was its natural color. These patterns caused the Heaven's Fall arrow to emit an even more ferocious aura. It was probably the effect of the black and red Avicii origin crystal. The Avicii origin crystal from the 9 underworlds had indeed enhanced the Heaven's Fall bow's ability. It was as if the bow had been reborn. Unfortunately, although this kind of transformation was a good thing and the might of the heavenly fallen bow had become stronger, a calamity had descended upon Yixian because of this. To be more precise, the calamity wasn't caused by the Avicii origin crystal's transformation. There were 2 factors that caused the calamity. First, the mutated demon dragon's shadow appeared, exuding a dense primordial aura. Then, the mutated primordial Yaksha appeared, exuding a similarly dense primordial aura. The true forms of these 2 existences were the strongest primordial supremes in the distant primordial era, and they belonged to the same faction. 2 such auras had appeared in a short period of time, and both of them were mutated. The ancient auras were extremely strong, and in the end, all of this finally attracted the attention of some kind of power. This mysterious power could perhaps be called the will of the heavenly Tao. Ever since he experienced the primordial cage in the Demonkin Star region, Yixian had been thinking about one thing, and that was whether the will of the heavens existed in this environment of space. He had thought about this question for a long time, and in the end, he was inclined to deny it. The level of the will of the heavenly Tao was too high. The galaxy was so vast. If there was really a starry sky-level will of the heavenly Tao controlling this endless galaxy, how powerful would it be? Perhaps even the primordial heavenly Tao of the primordial era could not compare to this, right? This was too terrifying, too unrealistic. It shouldn't exist. In his opinion, although there was the great Tao of the starry sky and thousands of laws in the vast starry sky, the will of the heavenly way, which was like the ruler of all things, should not exist. Yixian had also never heard of any expert in the starry sky who would face a heavenly tribulation when breaking through a realm. This just so happened to confirm his guess. However, all of this was completely overturned at this moment. Rumble! Boom! In the instant that the 1,000-meter-tall desolate ancient Xianxia appeared behind Yixian, a series of thunderous explosions suddenly sounded out from the boundless galaxy outside of Victorious Return City's starry sky barrier. A canopy of cyan thunderclouds was rapidly gathering, and in the blink of an eye, it had already extended for tens of thousands of kilometers, occupying nearly half of Victorious Return sky, and was still expanding. This was clearly the rhythm of a heavenly tribulation. The countless army commanders in Triumph City were all stunned. Was someone about to undergo a heavenly tribulation? In the starry sky environment, this was simply a matter of legend, something that no one could imagine. What the hell is this guy doing? He actually attracted the attention of the will of the heavenly way? How is this possible? Looking up at the sky this time, even the wretched mosquito butcher, whose cultivation was at least of the 15th great realm, showed an extremely dignified expression, even slightly pale. He muttered to himself, "What the hell is going on? This shouldn't be. Isn't the great Tao of the starry sky the convergence of thousands of laws? How could the will of the heavenly way appear? This is too shocking." No, the cyan tribulation clouds are not condensed by this plane itself, but by crossing through the void. In the end, the wretched mosquito butcher's eyes lit up as he examined the countless cyan thunderclouds in the sky above Triumph City. He finally discovered something and immediately exclaimed, "In the deepest part of this vast thundercloud, there is clearly a strong aura from another plane." What is that? A giant closed heaven's eye? A heavenly eye of the great Tao? What is its origin? It is actually cyan, hidden behind a crack in the void. That is another plane. It is precisely because it sensed something, even if it is in a deep sleep at this moment, it actually subconsciously tore open the void, and the endless cyan thunderclouds descended. Roar! At the same time, as the sharp pain of all the flesh and blood in Yixian's body completely disappeared, a high-pitched dragon roar sounded again. The phantom of the demonic dragon that had just disappeared appeared again, side by side with the desolate ancient Xianxia, who was almost fully drawn, behind Yixian. The eyes of the two powerful supreme beings were full of strong killing intent as they looked at the crack in the void in the depths of the cyan thunderclouds. They seemed to have also sensed something. It was a very familiar aura, but it was very weak now, as if it was in a deep sleep. The efficacy of the Calamity Dragon Pill was completely absorbed and the shackles on countless flesh and blood cells in Yixian's body were torn a little more. It was indeed useful. The familiar system prompt sounded in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host. The realm of the physical strength of Qi and blood has increased. Current realm. Black hole level 2. Ding! Congratulations to the host. The realm of the physical strength of Qi and blood has increased. Current realm. Black hole level 3. Ding! Congratulations to the host. The desolate ancient divine skill Skyfall Bow has completed its transformation. Its power has skyrocketed, and the evolution is gratifying. Ding! Congratulations to the host. The level of the demonic dragon bloodline has increased. The power of the related demonic god bloodline has skyrocketed by 10%. Ding! Congratulations to the host. When the system prompt sounded in his mind, Yixian opened his eyes. The moment his consciousness returned, he was stunned by everything in front of him. Looking up into the distance, the power of the demon soul pupil between his eyebrows bloomed, and there seemed to be an invisible light shooting out of it, entering the deepest part of the cyan thunderclouds high in the sky of Triumph City. With the help of the demon soul pupil's ability to see the source, Yixian clearly saw a crack in the void. The void on the other side of the crack had a strange aura. It was definitely not the third universe, but another distant mysterious world. Cyan Heaven's Eye? When the tightly shut cyan eye entered his line of sight, Xian was instantly overwhelmed with shock and cried out involuntarily. It was too familiar. Chapter 32:18. One arrow turns disaster. The moment Xian saw the cyan heavenly eye, he understood. Even though it was only an intuition, he was certain that this cyan heavenly eye was the commander of the enemy camp in the primordial war. It was suspected to be the will of the primordial heavenly Tao. Not only was it the true body, even the second heavenly eye that appeared in the primordial cage in the demon domain should be a doppelganger. And now, Xian saw the real thing. Although the heavenly eye was closed and seemed to be sleeping, at this moment, he was so shocked that his hair stood on end. In the end, he was still targeted. Ever since he experienced the primordial cage in the demon domain, Xian had always suspected that the commander of the enemy camp who participated in the primordial war should not have fallen, although Xian did not see the result of that battle from the inheritance images. But since the primordial cage appeared, his guess was very likely to be true. Otherwise, who set up the primordial cage in the demon domain? Until today, this guess was finally completely confirmed. Xian also suddenly felt an unprecedented strong sense of crisis because of this. Regarding the sudden arrival of this calamity, he understood after thinking for a while. This was obviously related to the heaven-falling bow's magical ability and the demon dragon's bloodline that had greatly increased in power. But this was no longer important. What was important was how to resolve the crisis in front of him. Never had he imagined that swallowing a single calamity dragon disaster transformation pill would actually cause such a terrifying calamity to descend, forcing him to transform the disaster. How was this a calamity dragon disaster transformation pill? This was simply a calamity summoning disaster summoning pill. Fortunately, the heavenly eye was not in a good state now. It was closed and seemed to be in a deep sleep. Could it be that it was severely injured in the primordial war? If so, the situation was not so serious that it could not be resolved. The headless infant corpse still had a chance to grow. At this moment, Xian suddenly had a strange intuition in his heart. He had a premonition that perhaps one day in the future, the primordial war in the distant primordial era would finally reappear in this world. But that should be very far away. At least for now, whether it was the headless infant corpse, the enemy camp commander, or the heavenly eye suspected to be the will of the primordial heavenly path, they were not in good condition and were in a deep sleep recovery period. His guess was confirmed again. At this moment, the corpse lantern tattoo on Xian's left chest suddenly heated up. He clearly captured two mysterious energies flowing through his body, and finally entered the black gold dragon scale of the golden bow hanging above his sea of consciousness. At the same time, after the corpse lantern tattoo shot out the two mysterious energies, it went into hibernation again without any aura. When the aura of its old enemy appeared, it had no intention of showing up to fight. Judging from the two mysterious energies that had entered the golden bow and the black gold dragon scales, the headless corpse was probably trying to use them to resolve the current crisis. But it had no intention of showing up. This was the first time Xian had seen the headless infant corpse avoid a battle. But it should not be because it was afraid, but because it was waiting. Screech! Screech! The small golden bow and the black gold dragon scale that floated above Xian's sea of consciousness were respectively infused with a mysterious energy from the headless infant corpse, causing the 2,000-meter-long illusory figures behind him to change at the first moment. The demonic dragon's roar and the primordial Yixia's roar sounded at the same time. Then, the two terrifying shadows of the primordial lords began to merge. At the same time, the heavenly arrow on the giant bow in the primordial Yixia's left hand shone brightly. In addition to the original golden color and the black and red patterns added by the transformation, there was a vague shadow of a black gold dragon hovering above the arrow. Xian's body violently shook as he immediately came to a realization. Without even thinking, he immediately shouted, "Immediately remove the starry sky barrier." Immediately! At this moment, all the powerhouses in Triumph City were completely stunned, including Naples and the wretched mosquito butcher. They could vaguely see the faintly discernible scene in the depths of the cyan thundercloud. Their hearts were filled with shock, and they were completely dumbfounded. Hearing Xian's shout, Naples reacted immediately and immediately issued the order. With a buzzing sound, the huge starry sky barrier that originally covered the entire Triumph City disappeared in the blink of an eye. This starry sky barrier was a pure energy form. It required a large amount of energy to form, so removing it was very simple. All they had to do was shut down the energy supply channel. Xiao! Just as the starry sky barrier of planet Victorious Return disappeared, an extremely sharp whistling sound came from behind Yi Xian. The primordial Yuxia's skyfall arrow was already fully drawn, and the arrow was finally released. In fact, it wasn't just a simple heavenly arrow that was released. Or rather, it wasn't just a simple heavenly arrow. The moment this heavenly arrow left the bowstring, the primordial Yuxia and the black gold demon dragon that had merged into one suddenly shrank at an unimaginable speed and merged into the arrow. When the tail of the heavenly arrow was about to leave the bow, the entire huge golden bow also turned into a golden light and merged into the arrow. In the blink of an eye, there was only one terrifying energy arrow left behind Yi Xian. It was colorful, and its aura was so terrifying that even he felt like his knees were shaking and he almost couldn't stand still. It was a simple arrow, but inside the arrow, there were two terrifying primordial supreme divine ability phantoms. Just how terrifying would its power be? It was simply enough to make one's imagination run wild. Yi Xian's heart instantly jumped to his throat. He had never been so nervous before because he clearly saw that terrifying heavenly arrow streaking across the sky of Triumph City and rushing into the boundless Milky Way in the blink of an eye. Just as it was about to plunge into the center of the Xian thundercloud that was still brewing, in the depths of the thundercloud, in the void crack that connected to a different plane, the Xian heavenly eye that had been closed all this time seemed to tremble slightly. It felt as if the Xian heavenly eye had suddenly sensed something and was about to wake up. Yi Xian's hair stood on end. He began to pray in his heart that it wouldn't wake up. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Even if the headless infant corpse that wanted to grow for a while and avoid a future battle was forced to appear and fight, Yi Xian still couldn't bear the consequences of such a battle. To be precise, it should be the third universe, the entire myriad Luo Federation, and the first universe where the Tianji clan resided. None of the three universes could bear the consequences. Boom! In less than half an instant, a terrifying explosion sounded. In the end, the Xian heavenly eye in the depths of the void crack couldn't open, and it didn't have the chance to do so. The heavenly arrow plunged into the Xian thundercloud and instantly exploded. A large expanse of the void was completely destroyed by a terrifying energy, turning into a void black hole. Even the void crack that connected to a different plane disappeared. Chapter 32:19. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Restarting the journey. A simple yet tyrannical arrow destroyed all of the thunderclouds. Even the Xian heavens I had sensed something and tore through the void to descend was completely erased. The power of a single arrow had turned into disaster. Yi Xian let out a long sigh of relief. Only then did he realize that his entire body was drenched in cold sweat. Very soon, the astral barrier that had just been removed reappeared. This was because the Xian thunderclouds in the distance had disappeared and a black hole had appeared. The majestic city could not be exposed to such an environment for too long. A newly formed black hole was still very dangerous. Although it was too far away and it was impossible for it to devour planet Triumphant Return, at least not for the next 100 years, a newly formed black hole was accompanied by a large number of terrifying rays. Following that, the upper echelons of Triumphant Return City arrived one after another. The wretched mosquito slayer was at the front, followed closely by Naples and the Eternal Dynasty State Preceptor, D-Heir, who had long been transformed into a member of the mech race. He was no longer the one who had wholeheartedly pursued the love of the butterfly. Instead, he had become a taciturn Ing Tai. Then came Zuofeng Tai, Li Mosquito, Ba Chai, Naboshan, Demon Slave Chief Barker, as well as the two Demon Slave Thousand-Man Brigade's Kiliarchs, Gue Hai Yi Dao and Song Qing Yu, who had followed Yi Xian from the beginning. Apart from that, Yi Xian even saw Du Wenshuan, who had been staying inside the Black Mosquito to research the folded space. Behind him were the 1,000 or so Federation elites who had been released from the Black Wind's 10,000-man hell. These people had now defected to Yi Xian and were extremely arrogant, declaring themselves as the so-called Triumphant Returns think tank. In fact, in Yi Xian's eyes, these people were a bunch of vermin who shared the same stench as the wretched mosquito slayer. Nothing good would come of them being together. This was also because Triumphant Return City was currently located in the Death Star region. The void surrounding it was filled with a large number of dead stars that did not even have any energy aura. Otherwise, if there were any life planets in the surrounding void, who knew how they would be tormented by these vermin? Even though the crisis had been resolved, and even the future threats had been eliminated as well, the other party had sensed something and tore open a spatial rift to lock onto this region of stars. It had turned into an enormous black hole that left no traces behind. No matter how extraordinary its abilities were, it would absolutely be unable to find this place again. However, perhaps it was because everything that had happened before was too shocking, but the faces of the experts who had arrived one after another were still filled with shock at this moment. Even the almighty figure of the universe, old geezer Mosquito Butcher, was unable to completely recover. His slightly pale face had a heavy and solemn expression, and his signature wretched aura had vanished. This is truly rare. You don't have to worry about what happened before, and you don't have to think too much about it. The crisis has been resolved, and the possibility of future troubles has been completely eliminated. Yi Xian felt a headache when he saw that none of his subordinates made a sound after entering the castle, but their expressions were all strange. He knew that these fellows definitely wanted to ask, including the demonic dragon phantom that appeared behind Yi Xian, the desolate ancient Xianxia phantom, and the unexpected arrival of heavenly tribulation. Furthermore, it was from another mysterious and unknown plane of the universe that had broken through the boundary and descended. All of this was extremely strange. Among the experts present, except for old geezer Mosquito Butcher, who might know some of the truth, the others should be completely confused. After all, the commotion was too great and too frightening. It was understandable that they could not remain calm. Unfortunately, Yi Xian could not say much about all of this, nor could he explain it. In the following period of time, you can set your mind at ease and develop Triumph City in the Death Star field. Grow stronger as soon as possible. I have a hunch that the human race of the Third Universe, and even the entire Myriad Luo Federation, will undergo a great change. And it is very likely that the Tianji clan, the old enemy of the First Universe, will also be involved. When the time comes, all three universes will fall into some kind of turbulent vortex. We must take advantage of the storm to grow stronger as soon as possible. Only then can we have the strength to protect ourselves. After saying that, Yi Xian turned around and swept his gaze over the experts under his command. In the end, his expression turned serious as he continued. Regarding everything that happened just now, do not leak it out, including the matter of me returning to Triumph City this time, in order to avoid attracting trouble. As for me, I will leave tomorrow and change my identity to walk in the territory of the Eternal Dynasty, to train and grow. At this point, seeing that Naples Ing Tai and the others were about to speak, Yi Xian immediately raised his hand and shook his head. No one says anything. This time, I have decided to go alone. I will return soon. When the time comes, Triumph City will appear out of nowhere. In fact, this time, Yi Xian would not only be going alone, but even the trump cards he had were far inferior to before. The Tower of Desolate Antiquities Inheritance, Venerable Void Ladle, the Demonic Dragon's Phantom, and the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn were all moved into the devouring doppelganger's body as if they were summoned by the Headless Infant Corpse. Apart from the Headless Infant Corpse, Yi Xian's current methods were only secret techniques of the mind power. Annihilation Spear, Destructive Vortex, Absolute Shock, Perfect Shock, as well as the Mind Thunder technique, Mind Crush, Mind Charm, and so on. Other than that, there were also the Heaven Falling Bow, the Demonic Soul Pupil, and the bloodline abilities of the Black Gold Demonic Dragon, Giant Dragon Roar, Demonic Dragon's Eye, and Dark Seeing Light. Of course, there was still the Thunder Emperor's seal in his Sea of Consciousness that still contained 7 thunder beads, but he would not use it normally. This time, he would go out alone to train. He would try his best to resolve the crisis with his own strength, so that he could grow quickly. For a long time, he and his devouring doppelganger would be toying with each other, growing together. His devouring doppelganger would cause a ruckus in the 10 Ultimates Heavenly Palace of the human race's true cultivation camp. As for him, he would change his identity and look for opportunities to research gene cultivation fluid in the human race's eternal dynasty. At the same time, he would secretly look for the continuation of the Hollow Void technique, as well as information about the mysterious effects of the devouring origin crystal and other places of origin. As for the experts accompanying him, he only brought the mosquito beast Prince Xue Ben, who was in the beast bracelet on his wrist. He did not even bring the 8-starred Wang Ladle, the 10 million mosquito beasts, or the army of 100,000 ladle soldiers. These subordinates had already been exposed and were branded with Prince Xian's brand. Even if he brought them along, he could not use them casually. Otherwise, his identity would be exposed. In terms of treasures, other than the most basic treasures of a Starry Sky expert, the Withered Demon Bloodblade, the indestructible glass armor, and the hollow void shuttle, Yi Xian only brought the wild dragon ship and the giant life fortress. He did not bring the black mosquito ship, the black wind ship, and the other demonic human fortresses, as well as the lightning fortress. They were all left in Triumph City for the wretched mosquito butcher and Naples to use. This way, Triumph City could develop and strengthen as quickly as possible. Although this Death Star region was desolate and uninhabited, it was still very rich in all kinds of mineral resources. Although it did not attract the starry sky experts of the three major planes like the devouring origin crystal, it was still very valuable for the development of Triumph City. The key was that this was a land without a master. Any mineral resources on this Death Star region could be excavated as they wished. Chapter 32:20. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Tianzhan Empire. Yi Xian had originally planned to travel alone and bring only the Mosquito Prince Xue Ben with him. However, in the end, he had no choice but to compromise when his subordinates requested to go with him. He decided to bring a group of people with him, but he didn't want any powerhouses. That would go against his original intention of relying on his own strength to grow rapidly on this expedition. He decided to take Gue Hai Yi Dao and the 1,000 demon slaves under his command with him. Yi Xian had made this decision after some consideration. First of all, although Gue Hai Yi Dao and the 1,000 demon slaves under his command had been lavished with all kinds of cultivation resources during this period of time to allow them to rapidly improve their strength, their current cultivation base was far superior to when Yi Xian had first obtained the Black Mosquito Bastion. Chili Arch Gue Hai Yi Dao was already at the peak of the 9th level of the Star Realm, and the 1,000 demon slaves under his command were all at the 4th level of the Star Realm. Even so, for Yi Xian, who was at the 8th level of the Black Hole Realm, Yi Xian definitely wouldn't rely on them in the face of true danger even if he brought them along. If Yi Xian, who was at the Black Hole Realm, felt threatened, what use would 1,000 demon slaves at the 4th or 5th level of the Star Realm be? In other words, by bringing them along, Yi Xian wouldn't go against his original intention of going on this expedition no matter what. In addition, Yi Xian had an even more important purpose for going on this expedition in addition to searching for the next stage of the Hollow Void technique, the secret of devouring origin crystals, and news of new origin crystal production areas. That was to master the secret art of concocting the gene cultivation fluid as soon as possible and attain a higher level of mastery so that he could research and concoct the gene cultivation fluid on his own. This was a very complicated project, including the collection of information on the various natural treasures needed to concoct the gene cultivation fluid. There were many aspects that required a lot of effort. Yi Xian alone might be clumsy at times and be unable to do anything else. He couldn't possibly do everything himself, right? With Gue Hai Yi Dao and his 1,000-man army of demonic slaves, he could solve this problem. When needed, he could send them out to share his burden. These demonic slaves were all elite demonic scouts. They were completely capable of collecting intelligence and all kinds of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. It was because of everything that had happened that Yi Xian decided to take Gue Hai Yi Dao with him in the end. He summoned the Dongshu shuttle as soon as possible and got Gue Hai Yi Dao to lead an army of 1,000 demonic slaves into it quickly. In the end, Yi Xian waved his hand and kept the Dongshu shuttle into his undying world. He turned around and returned to the main building of the castle. No matter how his subordinates tried to persuade him, he refused to budge. The Heavenly War Empire was the same as the Heavenly Dark Empire. It was one of the 3 great empires under the immortal empire of the human race. The Heavenly War Planet was the capital of the Heavenly War Empire. The Tuoba family that had suddenly released a level 10 gene cultivation fluid and shocked the entire Federation was one of the top families on the Heavenly War Planet. They were one of the top families that had researched gene cultivation fluids for generations. It was similar to the Shenyuan family on the Heavenly Underworld Planet. There were many top-notch families on any empire's capital star. These top-notch families were all in different fields, but generally speaking, among all the top-notch families on each capital star, there were at least 4 or 5 who specialized in the development of gene fluids. The Heavenly War Planet was like this, and so was the Heavenly Underworld Planet. These top families that researched gene cultivation fluids basically all had the ability to concoct level 8 fluids. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to gain a foothold on the capital star, or they wouldn't even be qualified to enter the ranks of the top families on the capital star. Yi Xian had already activated his personal space communication system and connected to the internal star network of a flagship under Naples. He entered the database and made a complete copy of the information regarding the Heavenly War Empire and the Tuoba family. After all, it was the fortress fleet of Dynasty's immortal army on the immortal planet. The basic information about the three empires under Dynasty's jurisdiction and some of the important top families on the capital star was backed up in the data center of the star network in the fortress. Of course, this information wasn't complete. Some confidential information could only be obtained from the database of the Immortal Empire's first-level main network. That required authority. Moreover, the main control center of the Immortal Empire's first-level main network was a mature Immortal rank superbrain. Xian didn't dare to take the risk of invading. That would definitely leave behind traces and expose him. Only when the Immortal rank superbrain in his hands that had entered the mature stage had truly grown up and transformed into a mature superbrain would he be able to freely invade without any worries. At that time, even if there were still traces left behind, he wouldn't have to be afraid of the other party's pursuit. Since they were both mature Immortal rank superbrains, Xian had plenty of ways to cut off the other party's hopes of following the clues. The entire Immortal Empire occupied half of the territory of the Third Universe. In the center of this vast territory was the Immortal Empire's immortal star. The Zhou-Lian star region was divided into three parts belonging to the three empires. The one-third of the Empire's star region controlled by the Heavenly War Empire just happened to border the Death and Death Star region. Therefore, Xian's star journey from the Death and Death Star region to the Heavenly War Empire wasn't very far. However, this was only in relative terms. In fact, starting from the victorious return star, with the Dongshu shuttle that was now a quasi-starry sky treasure at full speed, he would immediately enter any natural wormhole that was safe on the way and perform a long-distance wormhole jump. At this speed, it would still take about a month to reach the Heavenly War planet. As for the provoking family's summons to all the influential families in the Empire that had the ability to refine level 8 genofluids and above, it indicated that the official date of the exchange meeting would be 40 days later. In other words, even if Xian rushed at full speed, he could only reach the Heavenly War planet 10 days earlier. After arriving, he would definitely have to make some preparations. After all, he was only going alone and didn't have the qualifications to enter the meeting. This problem could only be solved after arriving. 10 days was very tight. Therefore, Xian didn't dare to delay. Early the next morning, he took out the Dongshu shuttle and hurriedly set off, heading towards the Heavenly War Empire's capital, the Heavenly War planet, as fast as lightning. There was still a month's time on the way, but this time, Xian didn't use this time to cultivate. On one hand, this time he didn't ride on the other starry sky fortresses and other giant ships. The Dongshu shuttle was speeding all the way and required him to personally control it, so he couldn't go into seclusion. On the other hand, Xian wanted to take advantage of this time to properly study the information he had copied from the Naples flagship fortress on the Heavenly War planet and the Tuoba family. Chapter 32-21. Gathering of the Winds and Clouds. This time, the Heaven Battle Planet could be said to be a gathering of the winds and clouds. In the entire Immortal Dynasty, all the family clans and large factions that researched gene cultivation fluids were gathered together. Other than Bodhi Technology, Celestial Biotech, and Shenong Gene from the Undying Star of the Dynasty, who had the ability to concoct the level 9 liquid, all the top families in the three empires who had the ability to concoct the level 8 liquid had also arrived. The three empires in the Immortal Dynasty were the Heaven Nether Empire, the Heaven Battle Empire, and the Heaven Wind Empire. The three top families in the Heaven Nether Empire were the Shenyuan family, the Huangfu family, and the Nangong family. The three families that hosted the Heaven Battle Empire were the Tuoba family, the Gong family, and the Changyu family. As for the Heaven Wind Emperor family, the three families that could concoct a level 8 fluid were the Duanmu family, the Wu family, and the Shentu family. Other than that, there were also itinerant cultivator families and factions that did not come from the capital planets of the three empires. They also had the ability to concoct a level 8 fluid. They were the Huyen family, the Bailey family, the Pangcheng Pharmaceutical Company, and the Life Genetics Company. In the entire Immortal Dynasty, the top powers in the field of gene cultivation fluid research were these families and factions. There were three families in the capital that could concoct a level 8 fluid and above. There were three families in the capital cities of the three empires, as well as 4 itinerant cultivator factions and powerful families. There were a total of 16 families. Of course, among these 16 top powers, the 3 families that came from the capital's immortal planets had a transcendent status. This was because they had the ability to concoct a level 9 fluid. They were the pillars of the dynasty. But now, even the pillars of the 3 empires kept a low profile after coming to the Heaven Battle Planet. After all, the Heaven Battle Planet's Tuoba family had already successfully concocted a level 10 fluid. They had caught up with the rest and were the sole leader in the field of gene cultivation fluid research in the dynasty. For this, although the other 15 top families and factions had sent important clansmen to participate in this exchange, they were all holding back. They were not convinced by each other and were secretly competing with each other. In the everlasting dynasty, it was the first time that the top forces in the field of gene cultivation fluid research held such a large-scale exchange gathering. Although there had been similar events in the past, they were basically exchanges between the various empires and even some small countries. There had never been a gathering like today, where the top 3 empires of the dynasty and the top rogue cultivator forces gathered together. For such a grand event, the 16 top forces and families that had come to participate in the exchange had each sent a big shot to lead the team, as well as a group of true technical elites to carry out the exchange. Unexpectedly, the heirs of their respective forces had all rushed over as well. For example, Xianxia, the successor of one of the 3 great clans of the heavenly underworld empire, the Xianxia clan, had come to the heaven battle planet. The young masters and heirs of the other 15 top-notch families had also come. This was because, for these families that researched the gene cultivation fluid, the source of their future glory was the research and formulation of the gene cultivation fluid. Although they all had the ability to formulate a level 8 gene cultivation fluid and above, the subsequent research was more and more difficult. Now that the crisis had arrived, and the Tuoba family was the dominant force, if they did not take any action, they would soon be left far behind. In the end, they would not be able to recover from this setback and would gradually be forgotten by history. Facing this kind of crisis, the other 15 top-notch families all had their own countermeasures, and a marriage alliance was one of their many countermeasures. The 16 top-notch families and factions that researched the gene cultivation fluid all had different secret techniques and recipes in their hands, and they kept them to themselves and did not share them with others. However, if they were to form a marriage alliance, there would no longer be any suspicion between the 2 families. At least, they would be able to develop a high degree of cooperation to a certain extent. Perhaps there would be breakthroughs, and they would not dare to say that they would be able to surpass the dominant Tuoba family, but it would guarantee that the 2 families would be able to resolve this crisis and not be left behind by the general trend. There was still hope. With such thoughts in mind, the 16 top-notch families and factions that researched the gene cultivation fluid all arrived at the heaven battle planet one after another. Taking advantage of the fact that the conference had yet to officially begin, they all began to interact with each other every day to get to know each other better. Of course, this was basically just between the older generation and the younger generation. It was quite lively for the younger generation to meet up with each other. Xian had arrived at the heaven battle planet under such circumstances. After rushing all the way from the Death Star field, when Xian arrived at the heaven battle planet, there were only 5 days left until the official start of the conference. There was a slight delay on the way. Before entering the heaven battle planet, Xian had already changed his appearance. Now, he was an extremely rough and burly man in his 30s. He had a completely different style from the gentle and refined Prince Xian from before. Now, no matter who saw him, they would definitely not associate him with Prince Xian. Of course, this kind of appearance-changing technique was considered a small trick in the universe. Not to mention the powerful beings of heaven and earth, even the powerful beings of heaven and earth, who were 2 or 3 realms stronger than a shifter, would be able to see through it with a single glance. However, Xian had the headless corpse of an infant, so there was no need to worry about this. Even the powerful beings of heaven and earth would not be able to see through his original identity. In order to prevent his identity from being exposed, he even took off the beast ring that he always wore on his wrist and threw it into the Dongshu shuttle. This was to prevent people who were familiar with him, such as the purplish warbler, from seeing through the clues and analyzing his identity. For this alias, Xian used the name Linghu Chong this time. The top great families of the empire basically all had multiple surnames. Xian did some research and found that there just so happened to be no great families with the surname Linghu. Even the great families of some small countries did not have the surname Linghu. Thus, he decided to use it conveniently. After arriving at the heaven battle planet, he immediately used his personal intergalactic system to connect to the heaven battle planet's internal intergalactic network. Then, he ordered the system to search for information. Very quickly, he found out that the prodigies of the 16 great clans were gathered at the Clear River Tower today. In order to obtain some inside information from these people, he immediately rushed over. The Clear River Tower was very famous in the Heaven Battle Empire. It was located at the edge of a vast river in the imperial capital. This river was called the Clear River. The entire Clear River Tower was 18 floors high. Generally speaking, Only certain high-ranking officials and wealthy people of the imperial capital had the ability to go up to the 10th floor because the cost was too high. Moreover, the Clear River Tower did not accept Federation coins, which were blank star core crystals, but real star core sources that were full of energy. This was a cultivation resource that ordinary people could not afford. Even the powerful beings of heaven and earth would not complain about having too many cultivation resources in their hands. They would actually use them for drinking and drinking. Only the rich people of the great families and the high-ranking officials of the empire would not care about this. Chapter 32-22. Reaching the 18th floor Clear River Pavilion was well known in the Heaven War imperial capital. The 18th floor was the tallest building in the Heaven War imperial capital, excluding the few important buildings in the inner city. After reaching the top, one could see all the mountains and most of the Clear River. The scenery was beautiful to the extreme. This level 7 purple star core was the price to pay for seeing the scenery. Even if one didn't drink a cup of tea and just walked around casually, it would not be returned. Buying a level 7 purple planet core origin just to look at the scenery was simply daylight robbery. Ordinary people naturally wouldn't want to be spendthrift like this. But the young master of the Tuoba family, Tuoba Linfeng, definitely didn't belong to this group. Today, he invited the young masters and heirs of the other 15 top families to the top of Clear River Pavilion. There were 16 people, and the entrance fee to the summit alone was 16 level 7 purple star core origins. As the young master of the Tuoba family, who was the host, it was rare for him to have such an opportunity to show off. Naturally, it was impossible for him to invite these people over and just drink some tea and eat some snacks. It was noon, and Tuoba Linfeng had prepared a feast here. There were all kinds of rare beasts, spirit wine, and delicacies. They were all the best goods in the Clear River Pavilion. The wine and dishes cost at least hundreds of thousands of level 7 purple star nucleus origins. Even for him, it was an extremely painful price. But if he could take this opportunity to get close to one of the proud daughters of the 15 top families and leave a good impression, it would pave the way for a marriage alliance in the future. All of this was worth it. That's right, the Tuoba family also had the idea of a marriage alliance, but the starting point was different from the other 15 top families. The other 15 top families had this idea because they wanted to join forces to deal with the huge crisis brought by the appearance of the Tuoba family together. And the Tuoba family wanted a marriage alliance with a top family or force because they wanted to find a reliable partner. After entering the Medicine Saint's relics, they could rest assured and join forces to get the most benefits. Although the 18th floor of Clear River Pavilion was quite large, enough for hundreds of people to gather here, there were very few people here. Even if someone wanted to come today, after hearing that someone had already arrived, most of them would give up. Generally speaking, those who chose to spend money in this kind of place were not just for fun, but for a banquet with a purpose. In this kind of situation, it was naturally inconvenient to share a room with other guests. However, there was only one open hall on the 18th floor, so generally speaking, as long as there were guests who had arrived first, the latecomers would be tactful and either change the date or move to the 17th floor below. At present, there was only one table in the entire 18th floor of Clear River Tower. Other than the attendants of Clear River Tower, there were only 16 people, including Tuoba Linfeng. Because the entrance fee to this floor was based on the number of people, even Tuoba Linfeng didn't bring any attendants. The others were even more embarrassed. Originally, he thought that there would be a quiet environment, and that there wouldn't be any ignorant fellows who knew that the 18th floor already had an owner but still came to interfere and spoil everyone's mood. However, this kind of accident just had to happen. The person who came was Xianxia. He was nearly 2 meters tall and had a thick beard. He was dressed in gray clothes. Although he had an extraordinary momentum and was obviously a powerhouse, he gave others the feeling that he was a casual cultivator. Although he was powerful, he was not qualified to enter the 18th floor of the Clear River Pavilion. Therefore, when Xianxia just walked to the stairs of the 18th floor, an expressionless attendant immediately came over and politely raised his hand to stop him. With disdain in his eyes, he said in an extremely cold tone, "Fellow cultivator, please stop. The 18th floor is not a place you can enter casually. Why don't you take a seat on the 17th floor below?" Although he sensed that Xianxia's cultivation was in the black hole realm, and this attendant was only in the third order of the planet realm, the fourth realm, he looked at Xianxia with disdain. This was Clear River Pavilion. Not to mention a black hole realm cultivator, even a Tao Insight realm cultivator wouldn't dare to behave atrociously here. He was very confident and thought that he had something to rely on. The commotion here had already attracted the attention of Tuoba Linfeng and the others. However, they only glanced over and no longer paid attention to it. Tuoba Linfeng had ordered a table of delicacies, and they were all rare delicacies, including top-grade spirit wine. Even if the other 15 youths were all juniors of great clans, they wouldn't be so extravagant on normal days. Just one meal was worth several hundred to 1,000 level 7 purple planetary core origins. It was too scary. Therefore, everyone was eager to have a try and were in high spirits. This included the purplish warbler from Tianming Imperial Capital. However, she seemed to have something on her mind. Facing such a table of delicacies, she didn't smile. I think it's quite empty up there. Why can't we enter? Are you looking down on us? Since his current appearance was so rough, he naturally had to cooperate with him in terms of personality. Therefore, Yi Xian appeared to be extremely free and easy at this moment. As he spoke, he glared at him and shouted at the top of his lungs. You! That waiter was so frightened by the black hole realm aura that surged out from Yi Xian's body that he trembled and almost fell to the ground. Only then did he realize that the person in front of him was probably a hooligan. It was his fault for being so ignorant. With such an appearance, it was easy for him to guess. However, after a slight panic, he quickly calmed down. Thinking that this was Clear River Tower, the waiter immediately sneered. Emboldened, he glanced at Yi Xian and said with a sneer, "Fellow cultivator, you'd better not make trouble here. You can ask around about the background of Clear River Tower. As for entering the 18th floor, as long as you can take out a level 7 purple planetary core origin, it will be fine. But listen carefully, this is the entrance fee. Other expenses will be calculated separately." Isn't it just a level 7 purple core? I thought you wanted a 9-colored core. What's the big deal? You're looking down on us. Yi Xian sneered in his heart. He did this on purpose to attract the attention of the 16 top gentry disciples. After all, he didn't have the qualification to enter the top gentry exchange meet in 5 days, so he could only rely on these guys. At this moment, his voice was still very loud, and his tone was even louder. It sounded as if he didn't even care about the level 9-colored star core origin. As he spoke, he flipped his hand and threw out a level 7 purple star core origin. He strode up the stairs and reached the 18th floor. Then, he looked around and pretended to ignore the 16 young heavenly legends of the top aristocratic families who were looking at him in surprise. He turned around and walked to the window seat on the other side and sat down directly. That waiter was holding the level 7 purple planetary core that Yi Xian casually threw out. He was dumbfounded. Then, a trace of embarrassment and anger appeared on his face. How dare this guy say I'm looking down on you? Chapter 32-23. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations Medicine Saint's Relic had to be said that Yi Xian's words were indeed a bit pretentious, at least in the eyes of Tuoba Linfeng and the others. A level 3 black hole realm cultivator was indeed an expert to the attendant. However, among the 16 young masters and heirs from the various top clans present, which one of them was not a black hole realm cultivator? Even with their status, they did not dare to say such a thing, as if a level 9 colors realm was nothing. This person was obviously an individual cultivator, so how could he be so arrogant? Not to mention that a group of people had gathered here. Originally, besides the attendants of Clear River Tower, they were the only table on the entire 18th floor, and there were no other people, so it was extremely comfortable. But now, an outsider had suddenly arrived, and it was in existence with such a rough appearance. Most importantly, not only did he have a loud voice, but his temperament was also very pretentious. He was simply a killjoy, and it instantly caused the originally rather lively atmosphere to become sluggish. Except for the purplish warbler, who was still expressionless, as if he was thinking about something else, the other 15 people showed some displeasure. Humph, he's just an individual cultivator, puffing himself up at his own cost. I'd like to see how he's going to pretend later. It was not easy to invite the heirs of the other 15 top families today, so the atmosphere was quite lively, but now it was disturbed by a boorish individual cultivator. Tuoba Linfeng was angry, so in order to drive Yi Xian away, he deliberately raised his voice. With a sarcastic tone, he sneered, "Humph, in my opinion, this person can only look at the scenery on the 18th floor of Clear River Tower. I'm afraid he can't even afford a cup of tea. He can only watch us eat heartily. Such a disgraceful thing, If it were me, I would have left with my tail between my legs. In fact, this was his purpose. He did not want to have such a good gathering disturbed by such an unpresentable individual cultivator. He was forcing Yi Xian to leave with his words. As for his cultivation strength, Yi Xian was only at the 3rd level of the black hole, while Tuoba Linfeng was already at the 9th level of the black hole. He wasn't afraid at all, and if it wasn't for the fact that the situation wasn't right, with his temperament, he would have taught Yi Xian a lesson. Hearing his words, the attendant of the Clear River Pavilion, who was ridiculed by Yi Xian earlier, felt greatly relieved. The Tuoba family was a top-notch family in the Heavenly War Empire, and this time, they had even released a level 10 liquid, which shook the entire empire. At this moment, seeing that the young master of the Tuoba family was on the same side as him and actually took the initiative to mock him, he felt greatly relieved. However, although he wanted nothing more than to immediately walk up and deliberately ask Yi Xian if he wanted to order some spirit wine and delicacies as a form of humiliation, he considered that this fellow was a rough man. If he were to vent his anger on him, he was afraid that he would suffer an unexpected calamity. Therefore, although the attendant was in a bad mood, he didn't continue to humiliate Yi Xian as if he was courting death. Tuoba Linfeng saw that Yi Xian did not respond after hearing his words. If he continued to act like this, it would be a big loss to his status. Although he was unwilling, he did not continue to ridicule him and ignored him with a cold snort. In the end, this ignorant individual cultivator was only an unexpected interlude. Today's banquet was the main business. Perhaps the other party would immediately leave, so there was no need to pay attention to him. As a result, the attention of the top family heirs quickly shifted and they chatted with each other, directly ignoring Yi Xian's existence. Among the other 15 people, there were a few who were deliberately trying to get closer to Tuoba Linfeng. For example, the heirs of the Gongyang and Jianghu families, Gongyang Ji and Jianghu Xiaotian. These two people saw that the atmosphere of the banquet was somewhat unsatisfactory, so they turned to look at each other before speaking up, wanting to start a conversation. Linfeng, tell us about the Medicine Saint's ruins. Although Tuoba family head has not officially disclosed this matter, we have already received the news. Don't try to shirk away from it. That's right, in the exchange meeting in 5 days, Tuoba family head will publicly disclose this matter. In fact, some of the elders of our families have privately chatted with Tuoba family head and have already learned some things. How about taking advantage of today's banquet and Brother Linfeng explain some things to us? Since it will be announced to the world in 5 days, it is rare for us to get along so well, so let's borrow your east wind and see it first. Brother Linfeng, quickly tell us, it is said that the reason why your Tuoba family's research on the gene cultivation fluid has suddenly advanced so quickly, leaping past the 9th level and pushing out the 10th level in one fell swoop, is all related to the Medicine Saint's ruins. After we heard about this matter from the elders, we have been scratching our hearts. There is actually such a thing? Brother Linfeng, let's not keep this matter in suspense, otherwise I am afraid we will not be able to eat or sleep in peace today. As this topic was brought up, the eyes of the other top-class successors who had never heard of this matter lit up. They were instantly interested and urged one after another. Even the purplish warbler, who originally seemed to have some worries, looked at Tuoba Linfeng after hearing these words. It was obvious that he was extremely interested in this matter. When this matter was brought up, especially when he saw that the purplish warbler's gaze had finally converged on him, Tuoba Linfeng immediately became complacent. Ever since the purplish warbler had arrived on Heaven Battle Planet a few days ago, Linfeng had been shocked by her beauty the moment he saw her. Since then, he had fallen in love with her. Unfortunately, no matter how he tried to curry favor with her, the goddess had never given him any face. For this reason, Tuoba Linfeng had specially investigated and finally found out that the purplish warbler had been abandoned by the Imperial Dynasty's Casanova Prince Long Xian. His heart immediately became filled with resentment and unknowingly, he also bore a grudge against Prince Xian. At this moment, seeing that the purplish warbler finally seemed to have a bit of interest in him, and this matter was indeed as Gong Yangji and Jianghu Xiaotian had said. The Tuoba family's old family head had originally planned to announce this matter at the exchange meeting in 5 days, so it didn't matter if he said it sooner or later. He could take advantage of this opportunity to show his face in front of this group of top-class successors and let the goddess have a whole new level of respect for him, and even have a good impression of him. Why not? Thinking like this, Tuoba Linfeng immediately made up his mind. After clearing his throat, he faced the crowd and cupped his hands. Just as he was about to speak,
he suddenly saw that annoying rogue cultivator sitting alone on the other side.
He had been carefully listening to their conversation the entire time. That serious expression of his made even his ears stand up. Tuoba Linfeng was startled and immediately understood. He laughed and said, "After all this time, it turns out that you actually came to inquire about information. This fellow Taoist's appearance is rough, but his mind is quite meticulous. However, this matter is an internal secret among the top-class families. I'm afraid it's not good to spread it. If you know your place, you should quickly leave. Otherwise, this young master will call someone over and ask you to leave." Chapter 32-24. Linghu, the waiter had been waiting by the side. Clear River Pavilion had its own rules. The pavilion master had announced publicly that any guest who came here to spend money could talk freely. If the waiter leaked the information, Clear River Pavilion would bear all the responsibilities. For so many years, such a thing had never happened. Over time, the officials of Heaven Battle Planet had gradually gotten used to it. No matter how secretive the matter was, with an attendant by the side, it was no longer a taboo. After all, Clear River Pavilion had a great background and was full of mystery. It was said that even the monarch of the heavenly underworld empire was extremely courteous to him. With such an identity, it was impossible for him to go back on his words. Therefore, Tuoba Linfeng was not worried about having an attendant by the side. Furthermore, the matter he wanted to discuss was going to be revealed 5 days later. Originally, he was going to make it public. Now that he pointed the spearhead at Xianxia, he was simply taking advantage of the situation to bully others. He had long found him an eyesore. When the attendant heard that Xianxia's attitude was so tough this time, claiming that he would summon the head steward of Clear River Pavilion to expel them, he immediately felt confident. He was no longer worried that Xianxia would get angry and hurt him. If that really happened, the young master of Tuoba family would not sit idly by, because that was tantamount to slapping his face in front of everyone. Although that annoying rogue cultivator had an amazing cultivation and was already a black hole realm existence, he was only at rank 3. On the other hand, the young master of Tuoba family and the 16 people at his table were all in the black hole realm. What was there to fear? Under such circumstances, the attendant immediately puffed up his chest and walked towards Xianxia with a sinister smile on his face. He directly sneered, "Fellow Taoist, please leave. Otherwise, we will really expel you. At that time, I'm afraid it won't be good for our reputation." "Pah! Ah!" Just as the attendant finished speaking, he didn't even see Xianxia stand up before the former's face was slapped. His entire body was sent flying, and before he even landed on the ground, he spat out a blood arrow in the air. There were clearly 2 large molars that fell with blood. "Humph! You really are a snob. Who told you that this young master doesn't want to spend money? What's more, I just said that if you come up and hand over a 7-colored jade, you can look at the scenery as you wish. How long has this young master been here? Are you going to kick him out? Besides, how do you waiters work? This young master has been sitting here for so long, yet no one has come forward to serve me. Could it be that this young master has to personally run to the kitchen to find something to eat? Since you're so ignorant, I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of the owner of Clear River Pavilion. Get someone else to serve me. In addition, clean up this dog's fangs and blood immediately, so as not to affect my appetite." Ding! After being looked down upon time and time again, Xianxia's anger rose. At this moment, he imitated the successor of the Tuoba clan and kept on calling himself, "this young lord." He even directly taught this servant a lesson. Moreover, he even mentioned the master of the Clear River Pavilion. All of this caused Tuoba Linfeng's table of 16 people as well as the surrounding servants to be stunned. Unfortunately, before they could do anything, Xianxia, who had stopped talking, had already raised his hand and flicked a small crystal. It fell beside the wailing guy on the ground and made a tinkling sound, attracting everyone's attention. In the next moment, a large number of gasps came out. The rest of the servants only took a glance and were so scared that they trembled all over. Level 9 colors. This burly man with a rough appearance and a violent temper, who was suspected to be a rogue cultivator, actually shot out a level 9 color star nucleus origin. The wailing guy lying on the ground with his hand covering his bloody mouth glanced at it and fainted on the spot. Even in the Heavenly Battle Empire's capital, level 9 color star nucleus origin had not appeared for nearly 100 years. The last time it appeared was at the Imperial Capital's auction, which caused a sensation. This young master in front of them actually flicked out a level 99 color star nucleus origin. This was clearly the rhythm of using it to pay for food. It was too scary. Even if the crown prince of the heavenly battle empire came to pay for food, he would pay with a level 7 purple star nucleus origin. No one was willing to take out a level 8 black star nucleus origin, let alone a level 99 color star nucleus origin. This was a priceless cultivation resource, which had a strong effect on breaking through bottlenecks for the Origin Realm, the Tao Insight Realm, and even more powerful Starry Sky Masters. However, this young master in front of them did not take it seriously at all and directly threw it out as food. How terrifying was his background? It was said that Prince Xian of the Imperial Court had a large number of level 99 color star nucleus origin in his hands, but he was not so extravagant, right? How could such a background not make him faint on the spot? He was lucky that he did not directly die of fright. The Clear River Pavilion was indeed the Clear River Pavilion. The other waiters around them were shocked, but they soon reacted and each took action. One of them turned around and ran to call the supervisor, while the other two ran to Xian, bowing and apologizing on the spot. Some of them carried the fainted man away in a hurry, and the bloodstains on the ground were quickly cleaned up. As soon as Xian finished ordering, a middle-aged man at the peak of level 9 of the Origin Realm came in a hurry, with cold sweat dripping down his forehead. This scene scared Xian. It was not necessary, right? He was only at level 3 of the Black Hole Realm. How could a strong man at the peak of level 9 of the Origin Realm be so nervous and rush here? And he was wiping his cold sweat while running? If he had not seen all this with his own eyes, he would not have believed it. For the first time, Xian actually had the misconception that he'd arrived at the mortal world in the cultivation world of the starry sky. A level 99 colored crystal instantly gave him a sense of superiority as if he'd become a tycoon. This Clear River Pavilion was really a maverick place. It was a good place. I am Hu Dajiang, the director of the Clear River Pavilion. How should I address you, fellow Taoist? At this time, the director had already come close and stood respectfully by the table. He was still wiping his cold sweat, and politely asked Xian, "I have offended you a lot just now. The people below have eyes but failed to recognize you. Fellow Taoist, don't worry. He will not appear again." It seemed that the guy was going to be cleaned up. Xian smiled faintly. "Director Hu, you are too serious. It's just a small matter. A misunderstanding. I am Ling Hu Chong." "Young Master Ling Hu." Ling Hu Chong? Steward who was holding the 9th level 9 colored pill in his hand as he handed it over to Xian. When he suddenly heard Xian introduce himself, his hands trembled. It was obvious that he was quite frightened. The 9th level 9 colored pill almost fell once again. Finally, after stealing a glance at Tuoba Linfeng's table on the other side, he carefully put down the level 99 color star nucleus origin stone in his hand and said respectfully in a low voice, "Young Master Ling Hu, please enjoy. This meal is my treat. This thing is too precious. How can it be used to pay for the meal? Please keep it well." No. I have never had the habit of being treated to meals and drinks. It's just a 9-color star nucleus origin stone. What is it? Xian's heart moved, but he did not show it on his face. He picked up the level 99 color star nucleus origin stone again and put it directly in Director Hu's hand. "Serve this 9-color star nucleus origin stone. I want the best one." "Okay, I won't say more. I am a little hungry. Hurry up and arrange it." Chapter 32-25. Translator, Transin Editor. Transin Individual Cultivator Quota. At this time, Xian felt comfortable all over. It felt so good to be pretentious. An existence at the peak of level 9 of the Origin Realm didn't even dare to breathe loudly in front of him. It was really cool. Besides, in addition to calling himself the young master, Xian's words just now were a slap to the faces of the people at the table not far away. He reckoned that this time, he must have aroused their anger. Next, they would definitely come into contact with each other. Maybe it would even lead to a conflict. When the time came, he would talk more, and presumably he would be able to get some information. In fact, he really thought too much. At this moment, although everyone at Tuoba Linfeng's table heard the provocation in his words, strangely, all of them, including Tuoba Linfeng, were quiet at this moment. They looked at Xian with shock in their eyes, but not much anger. Although Xian was very surprised and doubtful, he couldn't continue to provoke them since they suddenly became quiet. Anyway, No one came to drive him away. It was impossible for those guys to not say anything when they gathered together for a meal, right? In this case, he would be able to get some useful information. At this time, the delicacies at Xian's table were served one after another. All kinds of fragrances assailed his nostrils, which made him very excited. Previously, although Xian had ordered a few dishes, in the end, he'd instructed Steward Hu to order a table of dishes according to the 9th level. Therefore, at this moment, the dishes that were served were filled to the brim, and almost none of them were ordered by Xian. However, they were the best dishes in the Clear River Pavilion, far surpassing what Tuoba Linfeng had prepared for the other 15 heirs of the top families. One of the dishes was a real dragon liver. Of course, this dragon was not the legendary divine dragon, but a kind of ferocious star beast in the void called the sub-blood hornless dragon. When it reached adulthood, it had the cultivation of the Tao Insight realm, and its liver was highly poisonous before it reached adulthood, so it couldn't be eaten. In other words, Xian's blood dragon sub-dragon liver was obtained by killing a Grotto Heaven realm ferocious star beast. Moreover, it was obtained within the last 3 days, because this kind of food would lose its freshness after 3 days and could no longer be eaten. Just this dish alone was enough to shock him. Before this, Xian felt that it was too wasteful to throw out a 9th grade, 9-color dish just to show off. Now, however, he felt that it was worth it. Although Xian had been Prince Xian for a period of time, he hadn't enjoyed the treatment of a prince on the imperial capital's immortal star. On the way back to the imperial capital's immortal star from the heavenly river star, although he had been warmly entertained in the heavenly dust kingdom and the heavenly underworld imperial capital, the only banquet that could be compared to the banquet in front of him was the one that the officials of the heavenly underworld empire had hosted when they were in the heavenly underworld empire. It could be said that this was only the second time he had eaten a table of good food made with such top-grade ingredients. At this moment, he was so excited that he even forgot about Tuoba Linfeng and the others at the table who were dumbfounded. He immediately began to eat the top-grade spirit wine. It just so happened that his appearance was also that of a starry sky strongman with a rough character. Even though his mouth was full of oil, they just happened to match each other and looked very harmonious. The first dish he tasted was the blood dragon sub-dragon liver braised in brown sauce. Xian had eaten this dish once at the official banquet of the heavenly underworld imperial capital. Although this dish was also top grade, in terms of freshness, it was obviously a little worse than the previous one. Xian suddenly came to a realization when he thought about how this kind of adult sub-blood dragon liver could only be stored for 3 days and couldn't be eaten after 3 days. As he ate, he muttered, "Sigh, it's already the 3rd day of this horned dragon liver. Although the ingredients are of the highest quality, the freshness is still a bit lacking, which affects the quality." As soon as the sentence was said, Director Hu, who had been waiting not far away, immediately flashed his eyes, and then quietly retreated. Based on this sentence alone, he was certain that this young Master Ling Hu was not lying. Otherwise, how could an ordinary person who didn't even know what the sub-blood dragon's liver tasted like would know that it was an ingredient that had been stored for 3 days just by eating it? In fact, the value of this blood dragon liver was almost the value of a level 9 color star nucleus origin. It was the main dish, and the rest were just complementary. A dish represented an adult blood dragon of the Tao Insight realm cultivation base. This degree of extravagance, even the young master of the Tuoba family didn't dare to enjoy it. Originally, this blood dragon liver was going to be roasted at night and sent to the owner of the Qingjiang pavilion if no one ordered it at noon today. It was enough to show its preciousness. However, Xian tasted that it had been stored for 3 days after eating a piece, which showed that he often ate this kind of thing. Who else could be so extravagant and have the capital to be so extravagant? Except for the legendary young master of the Ling Hu family, who else could it be? In addition to Director Hu, the heirs of the 3 top families and forces in the imperial capital who could formulate the level 9 liquid from the immortal star were Zhao Qianru of Bodhi Technology, Yuan Zhua of Celestial Master Creatures, and Dongfeng Lin of Shenong Genes. At this moment, they all turned to look at each other as if they had a tacit understanding. As the heirs of the top forces from the immortal star, they were originally a level higher than the young masters of the top families such as the Tuoba family on the imperial capital star of the 3 empires. Therefore, they had also tasted the blood dragon liver. Although it was only once or twice, it was enough to let them know that Xian's words were not empty. This guy was like them, who had eaten the blood dragon liver at least once or twice. His identity and background were not inferior to theirs. This was in line with the legendary Ling Hu family. Could it be that this Ling Hu Chong was really the young master of the Ling Hu family? On this point,
In addition to the three of them, the others were also pondering in their hearts at this moment.
A few people even whispered to each other. This can't really be the legendary Linghu family's member, right? But hearing him call himself the young master, it's probably not far from the truth. The surname Linghu is too sensitive. It hasn't appeared for more than 2,000 years.
Even if there are some scattered clansmen wandering outside, those who are qualified to be called the young master are probably only the direct descendants of the Linghu family back then.
There's something strange about this. Could it be that he's here because of the exchange this time? Is the Linghu family going to appear again?
I heard that they were able to formulate the level 9 liquid more than 2,000 years ago.
They are the first family in the imperial capital. No matter how amazing the Linghu family was back then, they were annihilated in the dust of history in the end. No one knows what happened back then, but this time, the Linghu family clearly came with a high profile. This is really the rhythm of their appearance. Unfortunately, they are no longer glorious now. They don't even have the qualifications to enter the exchange conference. Chapter 32-26. The Ancient Tablet of Inheritance Linghu Clan? Xian was eating heartily while listening to the conversation at the table in the distance. The feeling in his heart at this time was really difficult to describe. Listening to the conversation, this so-called Linghu clan was obviously extraordinary.
They were actually the leaders of the entire dynasty more than 2,000 years ago in the field of gene cultivation fluids, the first existence to formulate a level 9 gene cultivation fluid.
No wonder Chief Hu reacted so strongly when he heard him mention Linghu Chong's name. However, the strange disappearance of the Linghu clan must be a secret, so the name of Linghu had long disappeared. Even when Xian casually searched the Federation's star network before, he couldn't find this information. It was obvious that someone deliberately erased it. A random alias actually caused this kind of disturbance, which really made Xian speechless. But this didn't matter, it was just an alias anyway. The most important thing was to enter this time's top aristocratic exchange and obtain various secret techniques related to gene cultivation fluids. Just now, he heard those guys whispering that in addition to the 16 top aristocratic families and forces, there seemed to be 10 rogue cultivator spots to compete for. Once he went back and inquired about it, this matter would be settled. Thinking like this, Xian suddenly became focused and didn't have the mood to pay attention to what Tuoba Linfeng and the others were whispering. The table of top delicacies and wine in front of him was exchanged with a level 9 9-color jade. Although he had a lot of 9-color jade, he couldn't waste them. It was rare to be extravagant, so he must not treat himself unfairly. So, Xian withdrew his thoughts and began to concentrate on tasting the delicious food in front of him. Sometimes, he would pour a cup of top-grade spirit wine. The taste was simply too good, and even he was a little intoxicated. On the side, Tuoba Linfeng and the others also recovered from the shock. Seeing Xian drinking the spirit wine and eating the top-grade delicacies without paying attention to them, these guys gradually adapted. No one provoked Xian again, and they chatted happily. Not long after, Tuoba Linfeng mentioned the Medicine King's relics that someone had just asked about. He even deliberately mentioned the way to obtain the 10 rogue cultivators' quotas. When he spoke, he subconsciously glanced at Xian. This included the Heaven Battle Planet's other two first-rate aristocratic families, the young masters of the Gongyang and Longyu clans. This caused Xian's heart to tremble slightly. The three great families of the Heaven Battle Planet seemed to be a bit abnormal. They appeared to be somewhat nervous, as if they were extremely eager for him to compete for one of the 10 loose cultivator spots and use this opportunity to enter the conference. What was hidden in this? Was it related to the Linghu clan? Or was he being too sensitive? Oversensitive? The Medicine King's relics is located in the void not far from the Heaven Battle Planet. It is a void secret realm. Our Tuoba clan accidentally discovered it. After entering it, we brought out a Medicine King's steel. This is clearly an inheritance, and it is suspected to be extremely ancient. Since it dares to use the name Medicine King, it shows how mysterious it is. It should be a place left behind by an ancient cultivation camp's alchemy inheritance. Our Tuoba clan only entered the periphery and was unable to enter further. It is not a matter of whether one's cultivation is strong or not, but every step in this inheritance land requires a certain level of achievement in alchemy. Only then will the subsequent passages open. Our great families are the top forces in the science and technology camp that research genetic cultivation fluids, but we all know that when it comes to true alchemy, the alchemy faction of the cultivation camp is the real terror.
If the alchemy faction of the cultivation camp were to research the genetic cultivation fluid, I think at least half of the 16 great families in the science and technology camp would be squeezed out.
Unfortunately, they think too highly of themselves and always think that alchemy is the right path.
In their eyes, the genetic cultivation fluid of our science and technology camp is not even a pill, so they disdain to research it. Although facts have already proven that this is a fallacy, we have to admit that the alchemy faction of the cultivation camp is indeed unique in the field of alchemy.
They are stronger than us.
And this Medicine King's relics is clearly the top inheritance of the alchemy faction of the cultivation camp.
It is suspected to have originated from the primordial era and is extremely rare.
Although it is now in the control of our science and technology camp Starfield, it is inevitable that the alchemy faction of the cultivation camp will secretly enter after a long time.
Once he gets the core inheritance of the relics, we will have nothing to gain and will only be making a wedding dress for others.
Our Tuoba clan can be considered to have quite an achievement in the concoction of the genetic cultivation fluid.
However, even if we put a few elders in the clan together, we could only break through the periphery of the Medicine King's relics. When we reached the edge of the core area, we could not advance any further.
But even so, the Medicine King's tablet that we brought out still had a major breakthrough under the careful study of the elders. It allowed us to skip the 9th level of the fluid and concoct the 10th level fluid in one fell swoop.
You must know that this Medicine King's tablet is just a road sign that casually stands in the periphery area. It can only be considered an ordinary thing. The real treasure and inheritance are still in the core area and have not been revealed. That is why our Tuoba clan has invited the top forces and families behind you this time.
No matter what, we will work together to develop this Medicine King's relics, so that it will not be obtained by the alchemy faction of the cultivation camp in the future. After all, this time, that good-for-nothing Long Xian has caused the relationship between the cultivation camp and the science and technology camp to fall into an unprecedented tension.
The human race is about to be divided by him. Oh right, even Ziying was bullied by him. Our 16 great families are of the same breath and branch. Sister Ziying was bullied by that Long Xian. I'm sure everyone is as angry as I am about this matter, right? Humph. So what if he is a direct descendant of the imperial family? He acted recklessly, but in the end, didn't he still get sent away? If I meet that Long Xian, I will definitely teach him a lesson and vent my anger for Sister Ziying. This guy was obviously doing it deliberately. He was talking about the Medicine King's relics, but suddenly he changed the topic and mentioned the imperial family, Long Xian, and then turned to the purplish warbler. The heirs of the top families were stunned at first, then their faces became a little strange. They all stole glances at the purplish warbler. The latter had been stunned for a long time. For a time, he did not know how to respond, especially when the other heirs present gave him a strange look. It was obvious that Tuoba Linfeng's words reminded them of everything that happened between Long Xian and the purplish warbler. This matter was spread like wildfire outside, and the Xianyuan family's face could be said to be lost.
Tuoba Linfeng thought that his goodwill would move the goddess, but he did not expect that the flattery would end up making the purplish warbler a little angry.
I'm sorry, I suddenly feel a little unwell, so I won't accompany you. Goodbye. The purplish warbler glared at Tuoba Linfeng fiercely.
He did not give him any face at all.
As he spoke, he got up and left. Chapter 32:27. The rhythm of being crippled, puff puff. When Yi Xian heard Tuoba Linfeng suddenly mention him, and his words were so impolite as he clamored to teach him a lesson, anger arose in Yi Xian's heart. Before he could flare up, he saw Tuoba Linfeng unexpectedly flattering the horse. He was embarrassed on the spot and couldn't hold it in for a moment before laughing out loud. Not only did the people at that table hear it, but even the waiters in the distance also heard it. Their faces were strange, and they all lowered their heads, not daring to look in this direction.
However, their lips were all tightly pursed, and it was obvious that they were also on the verge of laughing out loud.
Tuoba Linfeng realized that he had been a little too stupid, exposing the scars of the purplish warbler in front of everyone. Originally, he wanted to show goodwill, but in the end, he had offended the goddess. After he realized this, he naturally didn't feel angry towards Xianyuan Ziying any longer, and he only felt guilt. At the same time, he blamed himself for being hot-headed and actually making such a low-level mistake. I'm afraid that everyone present here is doubting my intelligence right now.
Especially that annoying guy suspected to be from the Linghu clan. He actually laughed in front of everyone without any scruples, which was tantamount to slapping his face in front of everyone.
For a time, All the anger in Tuoba Linfeng's heart was directed at Yi Xian. The young master of the Linghu clan indeed made him afraid, but that was before. Now that he was enraged, Tuoba Linfeng couldn't care less. Although the fall of the Linghu clan in one night was closely related to the three great families of the heaven-warring planet, more than 2,000 years had passed, and there might not be anyone who knew the secret of that year. There was no need for him to feel guilty. Besides, even if they knew, the Linghu clan was no longer the only overlord in the field of alchemy 2,000 years ago. On the contrary, their Tuoba clan had now produced a grade 10 elixir, and their status was the same as the Linghu clan of the past. Everything had been reversed, so the one who should be afraid should be the Linghu clan's young master in front of him. What's more, whether this person's identity was real or fake was still unknown. In terms of cultivation base, he had even less to fear. His opponent was only a rank 3 black hole, but he was a rank 9 black hole great perfection. He could crush him with one hand. Under such circumstances, he was embarrassed and angry, yet he encountered the other party's unbridled and provocative ridicule in public. No matter how good a person's temper was, they would still explode. These thoughts flashed through his mind like lightning. Tuoba Linfeng steeled his heart and got up to slap Yi Xian's table not far away. He roared, "Linghu Chong, do you think I'm made of clay? Over and over again, you're simply courting death." Boom! A blue palm shadow, about 10 feet in size, whizzed out. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived above Yi Xian's head and slammed down from the sky. Yi Xian did not care about it at all. In a place like the Clear River Pavilion, one had to collect a level 7 purple star core origin just to walk around the 18th floor. It would be strange if there was no defense formation here. It was impossible to allow diners to fight here. Once someone made a move, the formation would be activated. It was impossible for Tuoba Linfeng not to know, but he forgot about it in a moment of anger. Wang! Sure enough, before Tuoba Linfeng's blue palm landed, the entire 18th floor of the Clear River Pavilion resounded with a buzzing sound. A huge silver light shield flashed out of thin air, enveloping the entire 18th floor. An invisible power appeared above Yi Xian's head like a shield, easily helping him to block the falling blue palm. Boom! With a light sound, there was not even a ripple of energy. The power of Tuoba Linfeng's blue palm dissipated in an instant, not even setting off a ripple. Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. To have such power, even if it was not a universe realm expert, it was at least the power of the 13th Genesis realm, or even the 14th cosmic realm. To be able to set up such a powerful defense formation, whether it was done by himself or by someone else, the owner of the Clear River Pavilion was definitely not ordinary. As the blue palm dissipated, the silver light of the defense formation that enveloped the entire 18th floor also disappeared in an instant. It did not take the initiative to attack Tuoba Linfeng. That was obviously impossible. The reason why the defense formation was set up here was to prevent private fights. How could it take the initiative to attack the attacker? However, if Tuoba Linfeng made a move again, the silver light of the defense formation would appear again. Although it would not attack him, all the power he blasted out would be blocked, which was also very embarrassing. Therefore, even though Tuoba Linfeng was gnashing his teeth in anger, he still endured it. It was a futile effort. He had already tried it once, so how could he try it again? Young Master Tuoba, you have gone too far. Just at this moment, Manager Hu walked over with a gloomy face. He first bowed to Yi Xian to express his apology, and then turned to look at Tuoba Linfeng who was gnashing his teeth. He continued in a deep voice, "My Clear River Pavilion has been established in Heaven Battle Emperor's capital for more than 2,000 years. During this period of time, there have been a total of 3 private fights between guests. 2 of them did not listen to advice and were stubborn. In the end, after 3 provocations, they were killed on the spot by the formation. The other time, the person who attacked activated the defensive formation twice. Although he was not killed, he was still severely injured. I have to remind young Master Tuoba that you have already made a move once, and the formation did not backfire. If there is a second time, I am afraid you will be seriously injured and crawl out of Clear River Pavilion. If there is a third time, I don't need to say more about the consequences. Young Master Tuoba, please respect yourself. In addition, all the people who have made a move in Clear River Pavilion will be blacklisted as unwelcome. From now on, if young Master Tuoba has any banquets, please change to another one." After that, Manager Hu turned around and was about to leave. Only now did Tuoba Linfeng panic. What kind of place was Clear River Pavilion? It was the top venue in the entire Heaven Battle Planet. Even if the Empire's crown prince held a banquet here, he would not accept reservations. Only when the person arrived and there was an empty seat could he fulfill his wish. He was still young. If he was blacklisted, it would be fine if he took the initiative to invite someone to a banquet. Although it was somewhat sullen, it was not unacceptable. But what if he came to a banquet for someone else? This was not up to him. Once the top nobles of Heaven Battle Planet invited someone to a banquet, it would basically be held here. If he was blacklisted, wouldn't he be directly expelled from the entire Heaven Battle Planet? He did not even have the qualifications to enter other people's banquets. Over time, who would invite him? This was simply the rhythm of completely crippling him. Thinking of this, Tuoba Linfeng immediately chased after him and tried to explain, "Manager Hu, this is a misunderstanding. Young Master Tuoba, please respect yourself and don't break the rules of Clear River Pavilion." Chief Hu stopped walking and turned around to glance at him. "If you continue to pester me, I'm afraid that you'll implicate your tablemates and blacklist them as well." Chapter 32-28. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations list of Medicine King's steward who didn't pay attention to the dumbfounded Tuoba Linfeng. Instead, he walked over to Yi Xian's table with a smile on his face and politely apologized a few more times. In the end, he brought up the main matter and said that the owner of the Clear River Pavilion, Mr. Hu, wanted to personally invite him to a banquet in order to express his apology. He hoped that Yi Xian could come over whenever he was free. After that, Supervisor Hu did not say anything more. He looked at Yi Xian meaningfully, then nodded and left. Yi Xian frowned. The owner of Clear River Pavilion obviously had an extraordinary identity. He was at least an old monster who had lived for more than 2,000 years. After all, Clear River Pavilion was built by him more than 2,000 years ago. Wait. A thought suddenly flashed through Yi Xian's mind. 2,000 years ago? Was it a coincidence? Legend had it that the Linghu clan was destroyed overnight more than 2,000 years ago, and this Clear River Pavilion happened to be built at that time. The surname of Clear River Pavilion's supervisor was Hu, and the owner called himself Mr. Hu. Was this Hu related to Linghu clan's Linghu clan? Coincidentally, he came to the Clear River Pavilion today under the name of Ling Huchong. When Steward Hu heard it, he was caught off guard and reacted too strongly. Then, Tuoba Linfeng made a move. Although Steward Hu did things according to the rules of the Clear River Pavilion, he warned Tuoba Linfeng not to say too much, so as not to implicate the people at the same table. It was impossible that Supervisor Hu did not know the identity of those guys. On the surface, it seemed that he was warning Tuoba Linfeng, but after thinking about it carefully, it was obvious that he was trying to show goodwill to Yi Xian. He was willing to offend the top gene fluid research families in the entire dynasty. But why did he do all this? Did they not put these families in their eyes at all? Or was it because Yi Xian said the name of Linghu clan, which was enough to make them look coldly at these families? No matter what the reason was, one thing was basically certain. Mr. Hu, the owner of Clear River Pavilion, was very likely to be related to the legendary Linghu clan that had disappeared for more than 2,000 years. Thinking of this, Yi Xian smiled bitterly in his heart. He did not know whether this was a blessing or a curse. He had just randomly picked a surname, but he did not expect to cause such trouble. Although the other party had only said that they wanted to invite him to a banquet as an apology. However, with the Clear River Pavilion's foundation and connections in the Heaven War Planet, if the other party harbored malicious intentions, it would be impossible for Yi Xian to leave the Heaven War Imperial capital without anyone knowing. Of course, he still had the ability to warp through space coordinates, but in that case, once he activated it, he would either go to the Death Star vortex or directly go to the black hole of life in the first universe. Wouldn't this trip to the Heaven Battle Planet be for naught? Yi Xian would never have done this if it weren't for the fact that he was in a life-and-death situation. It seemed that he had no choice but to make a trip to the Clear River Pavilion after he was done with the matters at hand. However, he was not afraid of this matter. On the one hand, it was not necessarily a bad thing. Even if there was danger, he could just use the universe coordinate jump ability to escape. As long as the matter was done, it didn't matter if he left or not. Thinking of this, Yi Xian suddenly felt relieved and no longer paid attention to this matter. He turned his head and glanced at Tuoba Linfeng, who was gnashing his teeth and glaring at him. Linghu Chong, the enmity between you and me is completely settled today. I hope you are really a descendant of the Linghu clan from more than 2,000 years ago. Even if you are not, since you dare to use the name of Linghu and call yourself young Master Linghu, then you should not be absent from the Medicine King Peak this time. Glaring fiercely at Yi Xian, Tuoba Linfeng sneered. In addition to the 16 top forces, there are 10 rogue cultivators who can enter the Medicine King's remains. From the day after tomorrow, which is 3 days before the Medicine King Peak, all rogue cultivators can sign up to compete. As long as you can leave your name on the Medicine King's monument, you will be eligible to participate in the Medicine King's Summit. The top 10 will be able to follow the 16 top forces to explore the Medicine King's remains. Don't let me down. After that, Tuoba Linfeng did not stay any longer and immediately turned around and left. The other heirs of the top clans and powers at his table also lost their interest. They looked at Yi Xian with strange expressions, and their faces were filled with bad luck as well. They flicked their sleeves and left. Not only did they not gain anything from this meal, but they were also almost blacklisted by Jianghu Pavilion. These heirs of the top forces were also sullen and extremely unhappy. The Medicine King's list on the Medicine King's monument? As long as you can get on the list, you will be eligible to enter the Medicine King Peak? And the top 10 are actually able to enter the Medicine King's ruins together with these 16 first-rate families and powers to explore? Hee, it's a bit interesting. As he muttered these words, Yi Xian coincidentally finished eating most of the top-notch delicacies on the table. There was only a pot of top-notch spirit wine left, so he didn't waste it. In any case, he had the image of a rough man. He immediately stood up, twisted the pot of top-notch spirit wine, and drank as he walked down the stairs. That back showed a strong sense of unruly freedom, which was dazzling. At the same time, in a pavilion on the 18th floor of Qingjiang Pavilion, 2 figures were hidden in the darkness. Their faces could not be seen clearly, but judging from the figure, the one slightly behind should be Supervisor Hu. He bowed slightly and seemed to be extremely respectful. The figure half a step in front was extremely stalwart, with his hands behind his back. Looking at the back, he should be a middle-aged man in his 40s. At this time, the man suddenly spoke in a light tone, without any sadness or joy. Look at this guy, does he look like him? This is hard to say. Sure enough, it was Supervisor Hu's voice. He obviously knew that the former was asking about Yi Xian, so he did not dare to say more. After a moment of hesitation, he said, Sir, there were indeed a few people who escaped from my Linghu clan, but this does not mean anything. I think this matter must be investigated in detail. Of course it must be investigated. The middle-aged expert, who was called Mr. by Director, who and suspected to be the master of Clear River Pavilion, nodded his head. There was still no sadness or joy in his tone. But I think his figure and style as a Jianghu hero are quite similar to that of the former family master. Alas, if the former family master didn't have such a temperament, he wouldn't have been. I hope that he is the descendant of the master of the Linghu clan. If so, I have been running Qingjiang Pavilion carefully for more than 2,000 years and secretly collecting a lot of information. I only hope to find some clues to prove that the wish of the old master of the Linghu clan can finally be fulfilled. Even if I die, I will have no regrets. Mr. Hu, please don't say that. Although you are not a member of my Linghu clan, since the ancestor's accident, you have taken in a few of my Linghu clan's collateral relatives and have been taking good care of us and never left. On the side, Supervisor Hu was terrified and quickly interrupted Mr. Hu's words. We just saw a little hope today. How can you say such inauspicious words? Linghu Bao is terrified. Alas, I hope this time it will not be an empty joy again. Chapter 32-29. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio Toba Square. After leaving the Clear River Pavilion, Yi Xian found a hostel in the outer city of the Heavenly War Empire's capital and stayed there. Although the hostel he stayed in was not the best, Yi Xian asked for the best room in the hostel. It was an independent small courtyard that even had a defensive formation. Although this was the capital of the Heavenly War Empire, and the defensive formation was basically a decoration, Yi Xian still asked for this independent small courtyard where he could get a piece of level 7 purple planetary core origin every day. On one hand, it was for peace and quiet. At the same time, he did not care about resources like planetary core origins. He had a lot of them, and he could always go to the graveyard of meteorites again if he used them all up. Previously, when he was only in the planetary core state, he had already gained so much. Now that he was in the black hole state, if he really went there, he would most likely gain even more. It was possible that he could empty half of the graveyard of meteorites in one go. On the other hand, he considered that this time in the Clear River Pavilion, he had most likely attracted the attention of the 16 top aristocratic families, including the owner of the Clear River Pavilion. Since he had already used the surname Linghu, Yi Xian could only use it until the end. Moreover, after everything that had happened in the Clear River Pavilion today, he vaguely felt that although the surname Linghu was sensitive, it was also because of this that it was extremely useful. For the current Yi Xian, it was definitely more advantageous than disadvantageous. As long as there was something convenient in front of him, it would be fine. As for the disadvantages, when the matter was over, he could leave at any time without any worries. He was not afraid at all. Even so, he still felt that it was necessary to learn more about the past of the Linghu family. Even if it was for the sake of not being exposed, it was still very necessary. After entering his small courtyard, Yi Xian immediately activated the defensive formation. From then on, unless he called, even the servants in the hostel would not be able to come in without permission. After all, this was the cost of one level 7 purple planetary core origin per day. This was the benefit of being rich. Immediately after, he gave another command to the devouring system, activating the attached personal space communication system and connecting to the Heaven Battle Planet's secondary star network. After successfully connecting, he directly infiltrated the central database. This place was not like the immortal planet, where there was a mature immortal rank superbrain, so Yi Xian could do all this without any pressure. Yi Xian's personal space communication system was not fully developed, but it was still at the immortal grade. As long as it wasn't an immortal planet, the core database of Yi Xian was completely defenseless, even if it was the second-level main network of the three empires. Of course, Yi Xian did not dare to touch certain extremely sensitive data repositories. Although the superbrains of the three empires' secondary main networks were not at the immortal rank, they were not far from it. Furthermore, they were mature. Even if Yi Xian's personal space communication system could be infiltrated, there would be some traces left behind. Then, it would be completely unnecessary to prevent the enemy from tracing the vine to the melon and tracing the vine to the melon. However, there was no problem at all if it was just a search for secret information about the surname Linghu. This information could not be found even in the restricted area of the second-level star network. There was not a single word about it, as it had been blocked by the government. Yi Xian did not understand the reason at first, but after he downloaded some information from a normal classified database of the Heaven Battle Planet's secondary main network and flipped through it, he finally understood the reason. It turned out that all this involved the Heaven Battle Empire and even the Immortal Dynasty's official power. Therefore, this matter was blocked later on. At any time, the people in power would do this. Everything that was disadvantageous to them would be covered up, and even if the people at that time knew, it did not matter. The long river of time would cover up everything. When that generation of ordinary people disappeared in the long river of history, their descendants did not experience that period of time, and could not find a single word about it from the dynasty's star network. This was equivalent to a period of history being strangled. It was as if it had never existed. Even if some of the long-lived star powerhouses knew about this, how could such existences go against the people in power of the empires and dynasties? Under the premise of no benefits, they would leak the truth of history and cause trouble for themselves. The general situation of the annihilation of the Linghu clan, as well as being forgotten by history for more than 2,000 years, was like this. The government did not want the truth to be made public, so it disappeared. At that time, the entire Immortal Dynasty did not have a clan or power that could concoct the 9th-level liquid. The Linghu clan was the only one, and there was no other. Unfortunately, they disappeared overnight. Then, the Tuoba, Gongyang, and Changyu clans of the Heaven Battle Empire appeared. According to Yi Xian's speculation, these three clans may be related to the annihilation of the Linghu clan, but they obviously did not get the secret technique and recipe of the Linghu clan to concoct the 9th-level liquid. If the Clear River Pavilion is really related to the Linghu clan, is the secret technique and recipe of the Linghu clan in the hands of the master of the Clear River Pavilion, Mr. Hu? Yi Xian's eyes flashed. At this moment, he suddenly no longer hesitated to visit the Clear River Pavilion in the future. The ability to concoct the 9th-level liquid more than 2,000 years ago was absolutely terrifying, and Yi Xian could not miss it. For the next 2 days, he stayed in the small courtyard of the hostel and didn't go out at all. He focused on researching the various methods of making the gene cultivation fluid. After arriving at Heaven's battle planet, He used his personal space communication system to steal a large amount of related data from Heaven's Battle Planet's core data vault. When there were only 3 days left before the exchange, Yi Xian left the post house and walked towards the Tuoba Square. In the outer city of the Heavenly Battle Empire, there were more than a dozen top aristocratic families. Among them, the 3 top aristocratic families that researched the gene cultivation liquid, the Tuoba clan, the Gongyang clan, and the Jianghu clan, had a relatively high status. Each of them had a large territory in the outer city. This time, the exchange would be held in the courtyard of the Tuoba clan's ancestral land. At present, in the Tuoba Square outside the Tuoba clan's ancestral land, there stood a simple stone tablet that was 3 feet high. The whole stone tablet was green, and various complicated patterns were engraved around and on the back. On the front, there were only 3 big ancient words written at the top. Medicine King's Tablet. Below these 3 big words, there were some names. The surface of the green tablet was flat and smooth, like the best quality ancient jade, and even emitted a sparkling light. In fact, the surface of the whole giant tablet was covered with a layer of green mist, giving a sense of vitality. Even if one looked at it from a distance, one could immediately conclude that this tablet must be extraordinary at a glance. When Yi Xian came here, the square had already been crowded with a large number of rogue cultivators. They were all here to sign up. As long as they could leave their names on the Medicine King's tablet, they would have the qualification to enter the Tuoba clan's courtyard in 3 days and witness this exchange with their own eyes. Chapter 3230. Hungry and Thirsty Ding. Congratulations, host. You have discovered an item of inheritance. Medicine King's Tablet. The treasure used to open the core of the ancient Medicine King's legacy. After refining and absorbing it into the body, one can enter the core of the Medicine King's legacy and obtain the inheritance. Do you wish to immediately collect and refine it? Ha! So the truth was like this? This Medicine King's Tablet was actually the treasure used to enter the core of the Medicine King's legacy and obtain the inheritance? Just like a key? Could it be that the masters of the Tuoba family who obtained it did not discover this problem? Yi Xian was dumbfounded by this appraisal result. This really made him speechless. The Tuoba family had invited all the top families to gather on the Heaven Battlestar in order to explore the Medicine King's legacy again. They hoped that everyone could join forces to enter the core of the Medicine King's legacy and obtain the Medicine King's legacy. Who would have thought that the key to obtaining the inheritance had already fallen into their hands? Yi Xian's heart thumped and he almost directly ordered the system to immediately collect and refine the Medicine King's tablet. However, he soon discovered that even if he did so, it would be useless. When Yi Xian's divine sense came into contact with the Medicine King's tablet, the general information about this tablet quickly appeared in his mind. The Medicine King's tablet had a total of 3 tests. If all 3 tests were completed perfectly, the tablet would recognize one as its owner. It seemed that directly collecting and refining it was not possible. Although this mysterious ancient tablet was not an ancient item, it was also mysterious and extraordinary. If one wanted to refine it, the only way was to pass the 3 tests of the Medicine King's tablet, and each test had to be completed perfectly. This should be a kind of scale selection method, in line with the essence of this ancient tablet being the key to opening the Medicine King's remains. Only by passing the 3 tests contained within the ancient tablet, and passing them perfectly, would one have the qualifications to enter the Medicine King's remains to receive the ancient Medicine King's legacy. No wonder the several elders of the Tuoba family were unable to enter the core of the Medicine King's legacy. This ancient legacy was bound to have layers of restrictions. This was a kind of protection for the Medicine King's legacy. Only by passing the tests of the Medicine King's tablet could one safely enter. The reason why the Tuoba family erected the Medicine King's tablet here was obviously to find such a person who could perfectly pass the 3 tests of this tablet. The so-called top 10 names on the tablet would be qualified to explore the relic of the Medicine King with them. This was just a gimmick. The purpose was to attract more cultivators of the starry sky to come and try. In fact, among the existences that had left their names on the Medicine King's tablet, there were many existences from the 16 great clans. Clearly they had already tried. If it was only to give the rogue cultivators a chance, why would they try? The front of the Medicine King's tablet was divided into 3 areas. The top was blank, which should be where the 3rd level test was. No one had tried it yet. As for the 2nd level in the middle, there were only 2 names. They were both from the Tuoba family. They should be 2 clan elders. Unfortunately, they stopped at the 2nd level of the tablet. At this moment,
There were many masters of the starry sky crowding the Tuoba Square. If they wanted to try, they only needed to release a wisp of divine sense to make contact with the Medicine King's tablet. There were less than 50 names on the 3 layers of the tablet. Obviously, after more people tried, they did not even have the qualifications to leave their names on the 3rd layer at the bottom of the tablet. In reality, even among these 50 names, whether it was those who had passed the first trial or the 2 suspected elders of the Tuoba clan who had passed the second trial, none of them had passed perfectly. This was because if they had passed perfectly, their names would appear in a special form on the Medicine King's stele. This was explained by the rules of the Medicine King's stele. Although this special form of appearance was not clearly described, the names of those who had left their names on the tablet simply appeared on the tablet. Obviously, they had nothing to do with this so-called special form. The 2 suspected elders of the Tuoba family whose names appeared on the 2nd layer of the tablet were also displayed in the 1st layer below, but they were ordinary names that appeared. This meant that even the 2 elders of the Tuoba family, although they passed the 2nd test, did not pass perfectly when they passed the 1st test. Moreover, they stopped after the 2nd test. Maybe they tried the 3rd test but failed. They did not even have the qualifications to leave their names on the 1st layer of the tablet. From this, it was enough to see how difficult the 3 tests of the Medicine King's tablet were. It could be said that as long as one could pass all 3 tests and leave their names on the tablet, it would be amazing enough. But to pass all 3 tests perfectly, it was simply unimaginable. After understanding all the rules of the trial, Xianxia was completely excited. He believed that these so-called 3 trials were both a type of scale selection and a type of nurturing. Through these 3 trials, he would be able to come into contact with the basic information of the Medicine King's bloodline from ancient times. This in itself was a type of increase in one's ability to refine medicine. In the face of all this, it could be said that he was hungry and thirsty. Without hesitation, Xianxia immediately contacted the Medicine King's tablet with the power of his divine sense again, and confirmed that he would accept the 1st test. Of course, the name he submitted was still an alias, Ling Huchong. In the next moment, Xianxia closed his eyes. From the towering Medicine King's tablet in front of him, a faint green light shot out, turning into a miniature energy shield that enveloped his body and prevented him from being disturbed by the outside world. This shield was still in effect. Its appearance meant that Xianxia had begun to pass the test. Only when the shield disappeared did the test end. There were many similar shields in the huge Tuoba Square. All the existences in the shields closed their eyes, as if they were cultivating. Their minds were completely immersed in the test of the Medicine King's tablet. Just as Xianxia began to accept the test of the Medicine King's tablet, a group of Heaven's Prides from the 16 families, led by Tuoba Linfeng, Zhao Qianru from Bodhi Technology, Yuan Zhua from Celestial Worthy Creatures, and Dongfeng Lin from Shenong Genetics, happened to come out of the courtyard of the Tuoba clan. They also planned to try their skills. They did not expect that as soon as they arrived, they would look up and see Xianxia begin his test. Gong Yangji and Changyu Xiaotian, who were the heirs of the top families of the Heaven Battle Planet like the Tuoba clan, were stunned for a moment, and then began to mock him on the spot. That Ling Huchong really came? And we have already started to pass the test. He is just a rough guy. It is said that the first test is the memory and identification of plants and various heaven's treasures. I think he is not even qualified to leave his name on the first test. Chapter 32-31. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Bright as the stars, the heirs of the 16 major clans and forces began to challenge the trials one after another, including Zhao Qianru from Bodhi Technology, Yuan Zhua from Celestial Biotech, Dongfeng Lin from Shenong Biotech, and the Purplish Warbler from Heavenly Underworld Star. They already knew the importance of this Medicine King's tablet from the Tuoba clan. It was the only key that could allow one to enter the core area of the Medicine King's ruins safely and smoothly to receive the inheritance. Of course, in order for this key to recognize its owner, the requirements were extremely harsh. One had to pass all 3 stages perfectly. The 2 most experienced elders of the Tuoba clan in the research of gene fluids had already tried this. It was extremely difficult. It was precisely because they found that they could not do it that they took out the Medicine King's tablet, hoping that someone could successfully refine it. When that time came, as long as they brought this person along, they could finally enter the core area of the Medicine King's ruins smoothly. Even the unaffiliated cultivators could try, so the heirs and other powerhouses from the 16 major clans would not let go of this opportunity. At this time, everyone began to try at the same time, secretly holding back their energy.
They wanted to leave their names in all 3 areas on the Medicine King's tablet and pass perfectly. Soon, dozens of green lights shot over and turned into miniature light shields, enveloping the powerhouses from the 16 major clans. They began to challenge the trials. Among them, in addition to the heirs of the 16 major clans, including Tuoba Linfeng and the Purplish Warbler, there were also some powerhouses from the other 16 major clans who wanted to try. Time slowly passed by. After about 7 or 8 minutes, Zhao Qianru from Bodhi Technology was the first to open her eyes. There was an additional name at the bottom of the Medicine King's tablet, and it was hers. This caused a wave of exclamations in the surroundings. Another prodigy had left her name in the first trial. At least thousands of people had tried before, but only a few dozen people were qualified to leave their names. At this moment, Zhao Qianru had done this in less than 10 minutes. It was really amazing. Following that, the Purplish Warbler also opened her eyes and left her name. Then it was Yuan Zhua from Celestial Biotech and Dongfang Lin from Shenong Biotech. They both left their names in 10 minutes. Including Tuoba Linfeng, Gong Yangji, and Changyu Xiaotian, the other heirs of the 16 great clans had all left their names in the first round. Sure enough, they were worthy of being the heirs of the great clans. In this aspect they were completely able to withstand the test. Although these guys all successfully passed the test after 10 minutes, they still left their names on the monument in the end. However, no one who passed was the Medicine Kings. Was the Medicine Kings. If they couldn't even pass the first round perfectly, one could imagine how difficult it would be for the next 2 rounds. Linfeng, that Ling Huchong is still in the first stage. We've all passed and successfully left our names on the monument, but he's still not done yet. At this time, Gong Yangji found something unusual and exclaimed softly. Everyone's eyes converged on Yi Xian again. Changyu Xiaotian immediately laughed. This guy is a big brute. We have just tried the first test. It is a test of the memory and identification of medicinal herbs and various heavenly materials and earthly treasures. With his rough temperament, it is estimated that he can't even remember 1/10 of it and can't recognize it. Ha ha ha. Tuoba Linfeng also laughed and was in high spirits. He called his friends to gather at Yi Xian's side. Let's go and have a look. We are not in a hurry to pass the second trial. After a while, when that guy finishes and opens his eyes, he will see us surrounding him. I guess he will find a hole to hide in on the spot. Just thinking about it is so satisfying. As Tuoba Linfeng's voice sounded out, Gong Yangji, Changyu Xiaotian, and the others immediately followed him. Yuan Zhua, Dongfang Lin, Zhao Qianru, and the others hesitated for a moment. They recalled how Yi Xian had almost caused them to be blacklisted by the Clear River Pavilion. They were also angry, so they followed him. Purplish Warbler frowned slightly. She looked at Yi Xian, who was shrouded in the green light. She also did the same and followed behind. However, she was not there to laugh at Yi Xian. In fact, since Yi Xian casually threw a level 99 colored pill on the 18th floor of Clear River Pavilion yesterday, she always had a strange feeling in her heart. She always felt that this guy with a rough appearance gave her an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Even his style of doing things, in her opinion, had a little shadow of Yi Xian. However, the difference in appearance between the two was too big. Furthermore, Prince Xian should still be in the star area controlled by the cultivation camp and should not have successfully escaped so quickly. Therefore, she was hesitant in her heart. She was suspicious, but she also felt that it was unlikely. She was extremely conflicted. The reason why she followed Tuoba Linfeng and the others was that she wanted to observe closely and see if she could find any clues to verify her guess. At this moment, Yi Xian's entire mind had been completely immersed. He was absorbing all kinds of basic knowledge about the path of medicine refinement as if he was intoxicated. The first stage of the Medicine King's tablet tested the challenger's memory, as well as their ability to distinguish all kinds of medicinal herbs, heavenly and earthly treasures, and even various kinds of ferocious beasts' flesh and minerals that could be used as medicine. The path of medicine refinement was ever-changing. There were too many kinds of medicinal herbs that could be used. These were all the basics. Not only did one have to remember their names, but they also had to grasp their effects. At the beginning of the first stage, hundreds of millions of medicinal herbs, minerals, and ferocious beasts would appear in front of the challenger's eyes. Each of them had a detailed description of their effects, and they passed by at an extremely fast speed. What the challenger needed to do was to try their best to remember them.
After this stage, the Medicine King's tablet would randomly select 10,000 kinds of medicinal herbs and ask the challenger to identify them. At the same time, they would tell the challenger their effects. If one could identify 1/10 of them, they would be able to leave their name on the tablet. If one wanted to pass perfectly, not only would they have to identify all 10,000 kinds of medicinal herbs and minerals, they would also have to identify their effects, characteristics, and other details without missing a single word. The medicinal herbs that were selected and asked to be identified by the Medicine King's tablet were naturally not ordinary. Basically, they were all rare existences in the world. For the challengers, almost all of them were new to them, and they would pass by very quickly before their eyes. Therefore, even if the experts in the black hole realm or even more powerful in the starry sky realm tried to memorize them by force, it was impossible for them to remember all the names and details of the medicinal herbs that flashed past their eyes. Even Zhao Qianru, who was the fastest to pass the first stage, only took her about 7 minutes. When she finally passed the first stage, she had only successfully identified a little more than 3,000 kinds of medicinal herbs, and only a little more than 1,000 of them had been described in detail. In her opinion, there was no such thing as an expert who could perfectly pass the first round and successfully identify 10,000 herbs randomly picked out from the tablet of the King of Medicines. Not to mention the details of their effects without a single word. Even a supreme expert of the universe realm with a terrifying divine sense would not have such an ability. Chapter 32-32. Pass again perfectly. Oh my God, what happened? The Medicine King's steel is shining brightly. Look, there's an additional name in the first stage area below. It's at the very top of this area. Furthermore, it's displayed in the middle. The strange light phenomenon on the Medicine King's tablet was released by this name. Ling Huchong? Was this a challenger? Why is his name in the middle of the list, and why is it shining like a star? Heavens! Could it be that he passed the first round perfectly? Is this person a monster? Although in the final test, he only needs to identify 10,000 types of medicinal herbs and at the same time, he has to state their specific medicinal effects word for word. However, these 10,000 types of medicinal herbs were randomly selected from the previous hundreds of millions of types. He actually passed the test perfectly. Doesn't that mean that he has memorized all of the hundreds of millions of medicinal herbs and medicinal effects? That's impossible. If he has this kind of ability, how does his brain work? Ling Huchong? Ling Hu? This name. Heavens, what am I thinking of? This is too shocking. Following the appearance of Yi Xian, Ling Huchong's pseudonym, at the top of the first section of the Medicine King's stele, he shone with a dazzling light like a star. The entire Tuoba Plaza instantly exploded, and countless supervoid powerhouses cried out in shock. It was also at this moment that the green light enveloping Yi Xian disappeared. This meant that he had finally completed the trial. In total, it took more than 40 minutes. However, the reason why it was slow was obviously not because it was slow in memorizing. Most of the time after that should be used to identify and describe the specific medicinal effects of those medicinal herbs in detail. There were a total of 10,000 types of medicinal herbs, and after identifying each one, it still had to describe the specific medicinal effects word for word. In just over 40 minutes, it was simply unimaginably fast. When this realization flashed through his mind, Tuoba Linfeng, Gong Yangji, Changyu Xiaotian, and the others all opened their mouths wide. Even Zhao Qianru from Bodhi Technology, Yuan Zhua from Celestial Biotech, and Dongfeng Lin from Shenong Biotech were shocked. They were completely stunned. The purplish warbler, who was standing at the very back, gaped at the calm and collected Yi Xian. At this moment, she suddenly felt that she must have mistaken him for someone else. Although Prince Xian was perverted, he shouldn't be to this extent, right? She had also passed the test just now, and she had a very deep understanding of the difficulty. She was an elite from an aristocratic family of alchemists, and Prince Xian had never come into contact with this field. No matter how monstrous he was, how could he do better than her? This Ling Huchong in front of him was clearly a supreme genius of the same level as him. The two of them were proficient in different fields. However, there was no doubt that Ling Huchong's outstanding talent was definitely comparable to Prince Xian's. Has that fellow finally met his match? As the purplish warbler muttered to himself, he felt extremely conflicted. He didn't know if he should be happy for Ling Huchong or worried for Prince Xian, who had finally met an opponent of the same level. He passed the first test perfectly in just over 40 minutes? That's faster than I thought. I thought it would take at least 2 hours. Sigh,
It seems that this Medicine King's tablet is only Oso. It's so disappointing. As soon as Yi Xian opened his eyes, he saw Tuoba Linfeng, Gong Yangji, and Changyu Xiaotian standing a few feet away from him. Their expressions were as if they had just been struck by lightning. He immediately reacted. He knew that these three fellows wanted to see him make a fool of himself. In the end, they were slapped in the face. While secretly rejoicing, he took the opportunity to act cool. As he muttered indifferently, he raised his hand to pick his nose and dug out a lump of black stuff. With a flick of his finger, he dropped it on the person under Tuoba Linfeng's nose. Then, he closed his eyes again and extended his divine sense towards the Medicine King's tablet. He kept whispering, "Forget it, forget it. Since it's so simple, I might as well pass these 3 tests perfectly in one go. Anyway, it's still early. When I'm done, I can go for dinner." In the next moment, from the towering Medicine King's tablet in front of him, a green light once again shot out and fell on Yi Xian, enveloping his body. The second test began. Oh my god, this guy is too fierce. He actually clamored to pass the last 2 tests before dinner. It's only been more than 2 hours. His tone is too big. That's not the key. Didn't you hear him say that he wants to pass perfectly? This is clearly the rhythm of taking away this Medicine King's tablet. The Tuoba family has already said that if he can pass all 3 tests perfectly, this tablet will recognize him as its owner. They will let him take it away and will not stop him. But is that possible? I heard that this tablet was obtained from an ancient relic and is related to some kind of inheritance. The Tuoba family obtained it with great difficulty. Can they really let someone take it away? You're thinking a little too far. There are still 2 more tests. Passing the first one perfectly doesn't mean anything. At most, it means that this rough man has great wisdom and an amazing memory. The next 2 tests are the real test of alchemy ability. It's not a simple rote memorization. He has no chance. These are not important. The only thing I want to know now is one thing. Is this Ling Huchong really related to the Ling Hu family back then? Don't tell me that you've forgotten how glorious the Ling Hu family was back then. In my opinion, he should be the successor of that bloodline. Didn't you see that he just flicked a suspicious object, and it just happened to land in the middle of the Tuoba family's young master? This is clearly intentional. It is said that the Tuoba family led the incident back then. At that time, they were just a small second-rate family. The Ling Hu bloodline is destined to rise today. They are here for revenge. Shoo, this can't be said. There will be great horror. Do you want to die? With these words, the sluggish Tuoba Linfeng finally returned to his senses. He raised his hand in horror and pulled out a suspicious black object the size of a mung bean from the middle of his nose. He put it in front of his eyes and looked at it. He immediately put his hands on his knees and retched. Gong Yangji and Changyu Xiaotian, who were like best friends, also didn't care about loyalty at this time. They pinched their noses and retreated like they were avoiding ghosts. In fact, this wasn't the disgusting thing they imagined. Although Yi Xian dressed up as a rough man, how could he be so sloppy? This was nothing more than a small mound of dirt that he had secretly rubbed out using the power of his cultivation base. Because it was too similar, it actually frightened Tuoba Linfeng to the point of being frightened out of his wits. Wah! Son of a bitch, too shameless. This young master is not done with you. Retch! After retching for a long time, nearly 10 minutes, there was no one within 10 meters of Tuoba Linfeng. They all retreated to a distance. At this time, Tuoba Linfeng, who had retched for a while, finally gradually recovered. After stopping the retching, he looked at Yi Xian with eyes that were about to split open. Chapter 32-33. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. No challenge at all. Ling Hu Chong. This time, the name that appeared on the top of the second section of the Medicine King's tablet was exactly the same as before. It was also the same 3 words that were shining brightly like stars. This meant that this burly man named Ling Hu Chong, who could pull out a suspicious black object the size of a mung bean from his nose, had once again passed the test perfectly. And it was the second test. The only difference was that he used more than 40 minutes in the first test, and only 10 minutes in the second test. It was simply unbearable. Many people around Tuoba Square had already vomited blood due to anger. If this second level was perfectly cleared by a refined and elegant gentleman, they could more or less accept it. However,
This boorish man in front of them was simply too different. Moreover, he only used 10 minutes to perfectly clear the second level. All of this was too shocking, too. Shocking. This is impossible. Absolutely impossible. Puff. After finally stopping from vomiting, Tuoba Linfeng was once again shocked by the name of Ling Hu Chong on the Medicine King's tablet. He roared like a madman. Finally, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. This was forced out by anger. Even Zhao Qianru from Bodhi Technology, Yuan Zhua from Celestial Biotech, and Dongfeng Lin from Shenong Biotech were all shocked at this moment. Then, a touch of unwillingness appeared on their faces. They all gritted their teeth and extended their divine sense towards the Medicine King's tablet. Including the purplish warbler, Tuoba Linfeng, Gong Yangji, and Changyu Xiaotian, all of them did the same. They were really unwilling and thought that the second test might be easier. This time, they wanted to give it a try. Soon, rays of green light shot over and enveloped their bodies. This group of people closed their eyes and began to pass the second test. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian curled his lips and disapproved. However, his face still had a completely indifferent expression. He shook his head and said, "Sigh, this is too disappointing. There is no challenge at all. Who would have thought that the second test would be easier? It seems that the third test will take less time. It's a bit boring." After saying that, he closed his eyes again. Another ray of green light shot from the Medicine King's tablet in the distance and enveloped his body. Yi Xian began to pass the third test. Countless experts in the surroundings looked at each other, completely defeated by this scene. Thinking that someone had passed the first two Medicine King's tablet perfectly translation, their breathing was extremely rapid. Could the third test be the same? If that was really the case, wouldn't it mean that the Medicine King's tablet would lose its owner? At this moment, all the experts in the square, their hearts were in their mouths. In contrast, Yi Xian, who had passed the third test in less than 2 ins, in less as he was the Medicine King's was translation as he. To him, the first 2 stages were simply too easy and satisfying. The first test was to test one's memory. Of course, this level of memory was no ordinary test. Hundreds of millions of kinds of herbs and minerals that could be used in medicine, including their detailed medicinal properties, flashed before one's eyes. Even if one was a powerful figure in the universe, it would be impossible to remember half of it. However, this was not a problem for the devouring system. Who could be like Yi Xian and bring along a supercomputer? Moreover, it was not an ordinary supercomputer. Its intelligence center was an immortal-level supercomputer. Although it was not as powerful as the intelligence center of the Immortal Star Dynasty's first-class main network, it was already mature. However, an immortal-level expert was an immortal-level expert. Its computing power was unquestionable. Everything that flashed before Yi Xian's eyes was instantly recorded by the devouring system. The next test was to randomly pick 10,000 herbs. This was practically cheating. As soon as the Medicine King's tablet picked one, the devouring system would select the target in Yi Xian's mind, including the detailed medicinal properties. He just had to read it. The reason why it took him more than 40 minutes was because there were too many herbs. Just using his consciousness to copy them would take so long. As for the second test, it was even easier. The second test gave him 1,000 pill formulas. Of course, they were all incomplete. They all lacked a certain herb, mineral, or ferocious beast materials that could be used in medicine. These could be found among the hundreds of millions of herbs provided in the first test. The second test was to test the challenger's understanding of the medicinal properties of these herbs instead of rote memorization. The challenger was required to analyze these 1,000 pill formulas and finally determine what kind of herb was missing, as well as the exact amount to be used. If there were no mistakes, then the challenger would also pass perfectly. To put it bluntly, this was a kind of calculation ability. Yi Xian did not care about it at all and directly threw it to the devouring system to calculate. The immortal-level supercomputer's calculation ability was obvious. Yi Xian only spent 10 minutes to perfectly pass this test because every time the devouring system calculated a herb, he would immediately copy the answer with his consciousness. In addition, there were only 1,000 herbs to copy and hand in, which was much less than the first test. Therefore, he felt that it was easier and easier, and he accidentally passed perfectly. The reason why he said that it was too unchallenging wasn't because he was pretending. It was because of Yi Xian's true feelings. However, in the ears of the other experts around Tuoba Plaza, It was truly hateful. Many of the experts had long since suffocated to the point that their faces were flushed red as they glared fiercely at Xian. For the first time, they realized that some people with a rough appearance, who seemed to speak whatever they wanted, and who had no shrewdness at all, were sometimes so hateful. This time, Xian started after Tuoba Linfeng and the others. Of course, the latter group of 16 was challenging the second test, while Xian was already at the third test. Xian's test had only started for less than 5 minutes when Tuoba Linfeng was the first of the 16 to open his eyes. There were 1,000 incomplete pill formulas, and he could only analyze up to the 50th one. He could not continue after that, so he was directly expelled. This time, he did not leave his name on the list and was eliminated. He did not even have the qualifications to challenge the third test. If he wanted to challenge the next test, he had to leave his name on the list in the previous test to qualify. As the young master of the Tuoba family and the future successor, his level should not be bad to this extent. He could still leave his name on the list in the second test. Unfortunately, everything before had already messed up his mind, and he could no longer perform normally. How is this possible? In a short span of 10 minutes, he actually managed to deduce all of the 1,000 incomplete pill formulas. Furthermore, even the amount of missing medicinal herbs was accurately calculated without error. Chapter 32-34. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The ancient tablet recognizes its owner within 10 minutes. The other 15 people had also finished their challenges one after another. About half of them had left their names on the second stage. In just a few minutes, another 6 or 7 names were added to the second area in the center of the Medicine King's tablet, causing the surrounding powerhouses to exclaim in amazement. But of course, the only one who passed perfectly and whose name shone like a bright star was still Ling Huchong. Among the 6 or 7 people who still left their names on the second stage, there were Zhao Qianru from Bodhi Technology, Yuan Zhua from Celestial Biotech, Dongfeng Lin from Shenong Biotech, and Purplish Warbler. But none of them planned to continue to challenge the third stage. At this time, the group looked at Xian, who had started to challenge the third stage with his eyes closed. They all shook their heads and smiled bitterly. Their tone was unprecedentedly disappointed and dispirited. This brother Linghu is really amazing. He only knew the difficulty of this stage after he tried the second stage himself. I didn't expect him to pass perfectly in just 10 minutes. That's right. Out of 1,000 incomplete pill recipes, as long as you can fill up 1/10 of them, that is, 100 of them, you can leave your name on the list. I can only barely do this. Moreover, although the medicinal herbs of those 100 pill recipes have been filled up, the dosage still needs to be considered. I didn't give a detailed dosage at all. But he passed perfectly in such a short time. Not only did he fill in the missing medicinal herbs, but the dosage was also correct. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it at all. It's too monstrous. There's no need to try the third stage anymore. With our level, we don't even have the possibility of leaving our names on the list. If I'm not mistaken, the third stage should require the challenger to create a perfect new pill formula out of thin air based on the 100 million types of medicinal herbs and minerals from before. The number should be 100. 100 people? Sigh, it's easy to say. Which of the pill formulas that have been handed down today haven't been refined and tested by generations of alchemists before they finally become perfect? Even a single pill formula needs many years of verification. This kind of creation of a pill formula out of thin air is the most difficult. It's impossible to create one, let alone 100. I reckon that even this stunning Linghu brother would lose in this round. This is simply an impossible mission. But even so, to be able to perfectly pass the first 2 tests, it's enough for him to leave his name in the annals of history, becoming famous in a single battle. They were right. The third stage of the Medicine King's tablet did indeed require the challenger to create an unprecedented pill formula out of thin air using the hundreds of millions of herbs and minerals that could be used in the first stage. There were only 100 of them. Don't look at how these 100 pill formulas seem to be very few in number. The Medicine King Steel's requirements were extremely strict. 100 pill formulas, as long as he could complete 10, he would be able to leave his name on the Medicine King's Steel. If he wanted to pass the test perfectly and make the tablet of the Medicine Kings recognize him as his master, then he would have complete control over the core area of the Medicine King's remains and obtain the final inheritance. In this third test alone, he would have to obtain all 100 pill recipes, and every single one of them would have to be perfect. All the herbs that made up the pill formula had to be one type more or one type less, and the amount had to be precise to the point that it couldn't be made into a pill formula. To put it simply, it was to say that the 100 pill formulas required by the Medicine King's tablet were all of the kind that had been passed down through the ages in reality, and had been tempered by generations of alchemists before they were finally finalized. This was definitely an impossible task. Even if it was a true alchemist master, it wouldn't be difficult for him to assemble 100 pill formulas out of thin air in a short period of time. However, if he wanted to ensure that these pill formulas were as incisive as those ancient formulas that had been passed down through the ages, and that the amount couldn't be increased or decreased, that was absolutely unrealistic. But for Xianxia, this wasn't a problem. In fact, to put it bluntly, this kind of new pill formula that came out of thin air, and at the same time, determining the most incisive ratio of medicinal ingredients, was a kind of calculation. This kind of calculation, an ordinary superbrain might not be able to do it. There were too many possibilities, and it was ever-changing. If he had to calculate 100 rough pill formulas at the same time in a short period of time, even the superbrain would break down. However, the central intelligence of Xianxia's personal communication system was an immortal-grade superbrain, and it had already entered the growth stage, and was no longer the fragmentary grade it was before. It could barely do this. It was just that the time taken was a little too long. Until 4 hours later, his third attempt was still ongoing. The 99 perfect pill formulas from before had already been successfully submitted and approved by the Medicine King's tablet. Now, Xianxia was going through the perfect calculation of the last pill formula. As long as the calculation was completed, he would be able to pass the third round perfectly. This was definitely the rhythm of making the Medicine King's tablet recognize him as its owner. The outside world was already in an uproar. Previously, those who had gathered at Tuoba Plaza were only a few rogue cultivators, as well as the younger generation of the 16 great powers. They had also come to try to pass the round, and wanted to leave their names on the tablet. But now, with Ling Huchong perfectly passing the first 2 rounds of the Medicine King's tablet, the 16 great powers were all present. The leaders of the great powers were all shocked, and they all rushed over. Looking around, the huge Tuoba Plaza was completely filled with a sea of people, and there was no empty space at all. There were even some powerhouses hovering in the air, but they were all in the distance. At least hundreds of thousands of starry sky powerhouses had gathered here, and they were all waiting for the result of Xianxia's third round. In the void far away, Clear River Pavilion's manager Hu and Clear River Pavilion's master Mr. Hu were hidden in the void, quietly looking at Tuoba Plaza, and they were silent for a long time. After a while, Manager Hu asked tentatively, "Mister, in your opinion, can this guy who calls himself Ling Huchong be the descendant of the main bloodline of our Ling Hu clan that escaped back then? The main bloodline took away the clan's alchemy inheritance back then, and it should be able to cultivate such a peerless genius. Other than that, I really can't think of any other power that could have such an achievement. Even the alchemy bloodline of the cultivation camp can't do it." This matter can basically be confirmed. Clear River Pavilion's master nodded, and his tone was filled with joy and excitement. "Old master, although the Medicine King's remnant book that you obtained from the periphery of the Medicine King's remains is only an incomplete inheritance, but if you put in a certain amount of effort and time, you can indeed cultivate such an amazing genius on the path of alchemy. I am very clear about this point. If there is no accident, Ling Huchong should be the descendant of the young lord after he escaped back then. Today, our Ling Hu clan is finally going to rise again." Manager Hu immediately became excited. Obviously, he had already made his decision in his heart, but he respected Mr. Hu's opinion, so he had not said it. Now that the other party had expressed his opinion, he immediately could not hold it in, and his voice was trembling. "You mean? Send the order. We will arrange the forces at the Medicine King's remains, and fully assist the young lord in obtaining the complete Medicine King's inheritance in the core area." Chapter 32-35. A sensation in the imperial capital at this moment. The sky was already dark. But Tuoba Square was still surrounded by hundreds of thousands of starry sky powerhouses. Even at night, this place was still as bright as day. As the imperial capital, the lighting at night was very bright. However, the most dazzling thing was still the 2 names on the ancient tablet of the Medicine Kings, which were exactly the same. Ling Huchong. It emitted an intense starlight that was as bright as the stars. At this moment, there was no one else attempting the trial in Tuoba Square. From the towering Medicine King's steel, only a single streak of green light shot out, landing on Xianxia, who was around 100 meters away. It formed a protective barrier,
protecting Yixian, who stood there with his hands behind his back like a statue from the outside world. The gazes of hundreds of thousands of starry sky experts were all focused on him. Ever since the leaders of the 16 great clans had arrived, Tuoba Linfeng, Shenyuan Ziying, and the other heirs of the great clans had all returned to their respective camps. But they were still paying attention to Yixian. The requirements to pass the 3 stages of the ancient Medicine King's tablet had already been spread out, and the entire Heaven Battle Planet knew about it. Even the requirements to pass the 3rd stage had been revealed. The 2 elders of the Tuoba family who had left their names in the 2nd stage had tried to pass the 3rd stage, but they failed in the end. The 2 of them had created a few unprecedented Dan recipes, but they were not recognized by the Medicine King's ancient tablet, and the number did not reach 10. Therefore, he didn't even have the qualifications to leave his name in the 3rd stage. But even so, after passing the 3rd stage, he would at least know what the requirements of the 3rd stage were. It was precisely because of the 2 of them that the 3rd trial's requirements were revealed and spread. This caused a huge commotion at that time. When all the experts in the surroundings thought about how Yixian was currently creating a new pill formula and how it had already been 4 hours, they all felt a chill run down their backs. That sort of thing required a lot of calculation ability. Every minute and every second consumed a lot of mental energy. Even the universe almighties would be horrifying if they could last for 2 hours. They would use up a huge amount of divine consciousness. But Ling Huchong had clearly lasted for 4 hours. It was still going on. He was simply a monster. No one suspected that Yixian was dawdling in his work or taking a break after deducing. That was not allowed. The 2 elders of the Tuoba family who had once passed through the 3rd level had the most right to speak and denied this possibility. At this moment, the head of the Tuoba family, Tuoba Xiong, the head of the Gongyang family, Gongyang Buhui, and the head of the Longyu family, Longyu Jinglong, were gathered together. They coldly watched from the sidelines as Yixian was enveloped by the green light that shot out from the ancient tablet of the Medicine King. Tuoba family head, in your opinion, can this kid make the Medicine King's ancient tablet automatically recognize him as its owner? After a short while, the patriarch of the Chongyu family, Chongyu Jinglong, asked in a low voice, his tone full of worry, I am now worried about the gains and losses. I hope this boy succeeds, because then our chances of entering the core area of the Medicine King's remains will skyrocket. But at the same time, I don't want him to succeed, because once he succeeds, it means... Don't tell me that if he can't pass the 3rd level, you will be relieved? The head of the Gongyang family, Gongyang Buhui, took over the conversation and snorted lightly, Don't regret what you have done. Even if he can't pass the 3rd level, being able to pass the first 2 levels perfectly is enough to prove his identity as a bastard of the Linghu bloodline. Other than the Linghu family, who else can cultivate such a monster? Let's act according to the circumstances. Tuoba Xiong, who had been silent all this time, also spoke at this time. He was obviously the leader of the 3, and his tone revealed an unquestionable decisiveness. No matter what, this person's appearance is a good thing for us. He can have such amazing alchemy skills, which means that the Medicine King's incomplete book that was not found in the Linghu family must have fallen into his hands. Even if this time we can't enter the core area of the ruins to obtain the complete book, at least we can still obtain the incomplete book. Whether or not he can pass the 3rd level, we must bring this boy along when we explore the Medicine King's remains in 10 days. It would be best if we can use him to enter the core area of the ruins. If not, we can just destroy him in the ruins and obtain the Medicine King's incomplete book. Gongyang Buhui and Chongyu Jinglong turned to look at each other, and a ray of light flashed in their eyes, and they didn't say anything more. At the same time, in the area where the experts of the Shenyuan family were, the old Shenyuan family master stared at Yixian, who was covered in the green light of the Medicine King's ancient tablet, and his eyes were shining with green light. Tissa. This Linghu nephew, the more this old man looks at him, the more he is pleasing to the eye. As he whispered to himself, the old Shenyuan family master seemed to suddenly think of something, and turned to look at the purplish warbler beside him, and asked tentatively, Girl, what do you think of him? Is he okay? The purplish warbler was also a little absent-minded at this moment. She didn't know why, but when she saw Ling Huchong, she always felt a sense of familiarity in her heart, and she always thought of Yixian, but the gap between the 2 was so big. Although they were both monstrous, their styles were completely different, and their fields of expertise were completely different. This made her feel very conflicted, and she completely lost her ability to judge. At this moment, when she heard the old Shenyuan family master's words, she didn't think too much about it, and just took it literally.
In addition, she had something on her mind, so she subconsciously replied, "He is indeed monstrous. This kind of person is too amazing." This was the truth. With the talent and foundation that he displayed, even the words monstrous and amazing were not enough to describe him. The old Xianyuan family master clearly misunderstood her, and hearing the purplish warbler's evaluation of Yi Xian, coupled with the fact that she was staring at him, her expression was clearly a little absent-minded, as if she was infatuated. This made the Xianyuan family master very satisfied. No matter what, there was finally hope that this silly daughter of his would not hang herself on a tree. Long Xian, that playboy radish, get lost. Today, this old man has finally found a good son-in-law that is compatible with this silly girl, and I definitely won't let him go so easily. Thinking of this, the old Xianyuan family master was immediately overjoyed. If this silly girl could form a good relationship with Linghu Xian, all of the previous effects would basically be resolved. Look, although my little girl is a little silly and has been fooled by that playboy Long Xian to the point of death, and has completely embarrassed this old man, in the end, she has finally found the right person for her, the ideal husband. In his opinion, this Linghu Xian in front of him was not inferior to Prince Xian in terms of talent, and was also a good match for him in terms of expertise. He was also in the field of medicine refinement, and had a common language with the purplish warbler, and was also a good match for the Xianyuan family. There was nothing more suitable than this. As he thought about it, the patriarch of the Xianyuan family actually raised his head and laughed loudly in the end, causing Xianyuan Ziying, who was beside him, to be suddenly shocked and feel a sense of confusion. Chapter 32-36. Everyone's attention at the top of the ancient tablet of the Medicine Kings. Below the 3 words Ancient Tablet of the Medicine Kings, there was nothing, but at this moment, a name suddenly appeared. Linghu Chong. And the moment this name appeared, it shone brightly. Like the other 2 levels below, it was at the center of the top level. For a time, the entire ancient tablet of the Medicine Kings had the same name on all 3 levels. They were all at the top of the level, shining brightly like stars. This meant that Linghu Chong had finally passed the 3rd level. Even if it was the 3rd level, he had passed it perfectly. In the void far away, Manager whose tears flowed down his face. It is indeed the young master. With such talent, who else could it be other than my Linghu family's young master? The heavens have pity on us. Even Mr. Hu was inexplicably excited, muttering to himself, after 2,000 years of silence, is the Linghu family finally going to shine again? Old master, Hu Qing has finally lived up to your expectations. I have waited for the young master to return. At the same time, the entire Tuoba Plaza fell into a dead silence. In the area where the 3 elite families of the Heaven Battle Planet gathered, Tuoba Linfeng, Gong Yangji, and Changyu Xiaotian clenched their fists, their eyes full of unwillingness and dejection. The 3 elite families of the patriarchs turned their heads to look, their eyes flashing, their faces gloomy to the extreme. Sure enough, that little bastard is back. This matter is good as well. Back then, a young master of the direct bloodline escaped. This young man should be a descendant of his bloodline and brought back the inheritance. This time, the Tuoba bloodline will all perish in the Heaven Battle Planet. It's time to settle the matters of the past. Humph kid, don't be complacent. 10 days later, we will enter the ruins. When your light and heat dissipate, it will be the time of death. In addition, in the Xianyuan family's area, the purplish warbler's eyes burst with splendor. Although she had guessed it, when it really happened, she was still shocked. At this moment, she muttered to herself, I have always thought that my talent in alchemy is amazing. But today, I have met this Linghu Chong, and I feel so frustrated. I can't accept it. Yes, we have to submit, On the side, the head of the Xianyuan family took over the conversation. He seemed to be quite satisfied with the attitude of the purplish warbler. He grinned and said, Girl, in the future, you will be a good wife at home. How can you not accept it? In your father's opinion, Linghu's virtuous son-in-law is quite good. What's wrong with having a rough temperament? If you want to use gentleness to conquer strength, you have to submit to him first, then you can make him submit to you in the future. Purplish warbler's eyes widened, #yen%. It was also at this time that the ancient tablet of the Medicine King, which had just appeared on the top floor, suddenly changed again. Swish! A blinding ray of light shot up into the sky. At this moment, all the names on the 3 levels of the ancient tablet of the Medicine Kings disappeared. Immediately after that,
3 huge ancient characters suddenly appeared. The character Ling appeared on the top layer, occupying the entire top layer. The middle layer had the word fox, and it was the same. The word Chong at the bottom also occupied the entire area. Ling Hu Chong. These 3 big words were about 10 feet in size. They were many times bigger than the 3 words on the ancient tablet of the Medicine King. These 3 words had already occupied the entire surface of the ancient tablet. At the same time, it emitted an endless amount of light. This meant that the ancient tablet of the Medicine King had been conquered. Now that these 3 words had appeared, occupying the entire surface of the ancient tablet, it was clear that the ancient tablet was about to recognize its owner. At the same time, the green light that enveloped Yi Xian suddenly retracted and entered the ancient tablet of the Medicine King. Yi Xian opened his eyes. The system beep sounded in his mind at this moment. Ding! Congratulations to the host for perfectly passing the test. You have received the request of the ancient tablet of the Medicine King. Do you want to accept it immediately? Accept immediately. Keep the ancient tablet. Yi Xian's heart was beating wildly. He would not be polite. This was originally the Tuoba family's public declaration. Since he had done it, it would be a waste not to take it. He immediately gave the order to accept the ancient tablet's recognition and keep it into his body. Xiao. Following Yi Xian's order, the engulfing system immediately connected with the ancient tablet of the Medicine King. The latter turned into a green light and directly entered Yi Xian's body and disappeared. At this moment, the entire Tuoba square was dead silent. Yi Xian, everyone's attention was on him. Tuoba Xiong, Gong Yang Buhui and Chong Yu Jinglong's eyes twitched slightly. Although this ancient tablet of the Medicine King was taken out by the Tuoba family from the ancient tablet of the Medicine King, the person who was keeping it now was the descendant of the Linghu family. That year, the Linghu family's downfall was caused by the 3 families working together. Hence, the unwillingness in Gong Yang Buhui and Chong Yu Jinglong's heart was not one bit weaker than Tuoba Xiong's. But the 3 of them held back and did not flare up. They even had a smile on their faces, as if they had seen the rise of the younger generation and were comforted by it. However, in their eyes, the glorious Yi Xian was no different from a dead person. At least that was what they thought. His heart was filled with hatred, but his face was brimming with a kind smile. Tua Ba Xiong, Gong Yang Buhui, and Long Yu Jinglong soared towards Yi Xian, who was in the center of the plaza. The other patriarchs of the dozen or so top-notch families did the same. All of them had smiles on their faces and didn't fall behind. They immediately flew towards Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian was definitely a super delicious piece of meat in their eyes. One should know that this ancient tablet of the Medicine King was the only key to enter the core of the ancient tablet of the Medicine King's remains. Now that the ancient tablet had recognized its owner, it meant that Yi Xian could successfully enter the core of the ancient tablet of the Medicine King's remains. Not only that, he could bring a group of people with him. Of course, the ancient tablet of the Medicine King's remains had a restriction on the strength of those who entered. They could not exceed the black hole realm. Therefore, they could only be juniors. For the leaders of the 16 top families, being on good terms with Yi Xian was related to whether their juniors would be able to enter the core of the ancient tablet of the Medicine King's remains with Yi Xian. This was the only hope to obtain the ultimate inheritance of the Medicine King. Girl, let's go and accompany your father to have a look. Tuoba Xiong, Gong Yang Buhui, Chong Yu Jinglong and the others are all green with envy. This is not a good sign. Turning his head to look at the purplish warbler beside him, the head of the Shenyuan family could be said to be complacent at this moment. He had long regarded Yi Xian, who was also known as Ling Huchong, as his new son-in-law. The more he looked at him, the more he liked him. Seeing that the purplish warbler was rather resistant, he immediately lowered his voice and persuaded in a low voice. Don't you want the inheritance of the Medicine King? That ancient tablet of the Medicine King is only the key to opening the core of the ancient tablet of the Medicine King's remains. It does not mean that you will definitely obtain the inheritance. Apart from him, he can also bring 19 companions below the origin realm with him. Everyone will have a chance to obtain the complete inheritance of the Medicine King. The purplish warbler was immediately moved. Seeing this scene, old man Shenyuan grinned again. So the 2 of you need to cultivate your relationship first. There are still 10 days, so there is still time. When the time comes, the 2 of you will work together to fight against the enemy. The inheritance of the Medicine King must be obtained. Chapter 32-37. Fragrant meat cake. Ha ha ha. This ancient tablet of the Medicine King was something that my Tuoba family had painstakingly obtained from the ancient tablet of the Medicine King. Unfortunately, although my Tuoba family had obtained some inspiration from the ancient tablet of the Medicine King, we were able to make a breakthrough in the research of the gene fluid and came up with a 10th level gene fluid. However, the talents of the experts in the family were limited, and in the end, we were unable to pass all 3 tests and make the tablet recognize us as its master. Landing on Yi Xian's side, Tuoba Xiong raised his head and laughed loudly. He had an extremely open-minded and extraordinary bearing as he sized Yi Xian up from head to toe. He nodded repeatedly. This old man placed this tablet in the plaza with the goal of finding a good owner for it. Today my wish has come true. Little friend, with your talent, since you have obtained the Medicine King's ancient tablet, you naturally have the qualifications to explore the Medicine King's ruins with us. That's right, little friend must not miss this opportunity. The head of the Gongyang family, Gongyang Buhui, said with a smile, looking at Yi Xian with admiration. This tablet is the key to opening the core of the Medicine King's ruins. With this key, the one who refines the tablet can bring 19 companions below the origin realm into the core of the Medicine King's ruins. We have decided to start the exploration in 10 days. Little friend, you can stay with us in the Tuoba family for the next few days, and we can exchange our knowledge of alchemy. Since the Medicine King's ruins only allows experts below the origin realm to enter, us old fellows obviously won't have this opportunity. With a similar smile on his face, the clan head of the Jianghu family, Jianghu Jinglong, chuckled and said, "Hee hee, the younger generation is replacing the older one, the future belongs to you young generation." This time, each of the 16 top families will send a Black Hole Realm Junior to follow this little friend into the world of medicine. You must be friendly and support each other. Only then can you successfully obtain the King of Medicine's inheritance and benefit the entire human race. In just a few simple words, he had already explained everything clearly. Moreover, he had even blocked the path of retreat, making it impossible for Yi Xian to refuse. Otherwise, he wouldn't be willing to benefit the human race. Otherwise, he would be able to obtain the Medicine King's tablet that the other party had painstakingly obtained without thinking of returning the favor. The patriarchs of the other dozen or so top-notch families seemed to be very satisfied with these words, and echoed one after another. As for Tuoba Lin Feng and the other heirs of the 16 great families, they all had different expressions on their faces. Looking at the current situation, Yi Xian was like a moon surrounded by stars. It felt like he had leapt to become an existence on equal footing with the patriarchs of the various major clans. At this moment, all the major clans were scrambling to converse with Yi Xian, but they could only accompany him from behind. For no apparent reason, they felt as if they were a generation lower than Yi Xian. This feeling made them feel stifled and extremely uncomfortable. Yi Xian laughed coldly in his heart. Actually, he had never planned to leave after obtaining the ancient tablet of the Medicine King. At this moment, this ancient monument had shrunk countless times, turning into a simple and unadorned little green monument, floating in his sea of consciousness. What surprised Yi Xian was that although this monument was not an item from the Desolate Era, but from the Ancient Era, after the Desolate Era, its grade was not low. It seemed to represent an extremely important inheritance. After entering his sea of consciousness, it was like the ancient Tower of Inheritance, floating in the central region of Yi Xian's sea of consciousness, standing side by side with the Rai-Di seal. It was not like the little golden bow and the black gold dragon scale, which were all around the sea of consciousness. From this, it could be seen that the Medicine King's inheritance it represented was not to be underestimated. Just based on this point, Yi Xian would definitely not give up this opportunity to enter the Medicine King's ruins. He had to go in and explore, and obtain the complete Medicine King's inheritance. According to his estimates, as long as he could do this, he would be able to concoct a level 10 liquid, level 11 liquid, or even a higher level of genetic cultivation liquid. In this way, the path of genetic evolution would be unstoppable. Yi Xian would be able to continue on this path. This was too important. In the face of such an opportunity, not to mention leaving by himself, even if he was chased away with a broom, Yi Xian would not leave. It just so happened that in these 10 days, he could stay in the Tuoba family to eat and drink for free. With his current status, the spirit wine and delicacies served by the Tuoba family would obviously not be too bad. Yi Xian had already left an image of a big foodie in the Clear River Pavilion. Even if the Tuoba family opened their mouth wide, ordering dragon liver today and wind marrow tomorrow, it would not seem too deliberate. No one would think that he was doing it on purpose. Anyway, He did not like Tuoba Linfeng, so he could use this opportunity to viciously disgust the Tuoba family. What's more, in these 10 days, he could also exchange his alchemy experience with the powerhouses of the 16 top families, including the Tuoba family. This was a rare opportunity. After passing the first 3 stages of the Medicine King's tablet, Xian was already quite skilled in alchemy. Although everything was stored in the database of the devouring system, he could easily access it at any time. It wasn't a problem at all to fool the experts of the 16 top-notch clans, and take the opportunity to obtain some of the secret alchemy techniques of the clans from their mouths. In short, staying in the Tuoba family for the past 10 days was beneficial and harmless. No matter how Xian thought about it, he didn't have a reason to refuse, so he immediately agreed with a smile on his face. While agreeing, Xian casually glanced at Tuoba Linfeng. He suddenly thought of another benefit. Didn't this guy say that he wanted to kill me? Now that I am temporarily staying in the Tuoba family with the status of being on an equal footing with the patriarchs of the various families, the patriarchs must have sent these juniors to build a good relationship. Taking advantage of this opportunity, I can teach them a lesson. Thinking like this, Xian suddenly smiled even more brilliantly. His eyes were filled with kindness, as if he was looking at his juniors. He swept his gaze over the faces of Tuoba Linfeng, Gong Yongji, Changyu Xiaotian, and the other heirs of the various families. Even the purplish warbler was not let go, so as to avoid suspicion. This group of people were also shrewd. They immediately caught something from Xian's slightly strange gaze. Tuoba Linfeng, Gong Yongji, and Changyu Xiaotian were stunned for a moment, and their faces turned white. Although they were not afraid of Xian, if the other party used this opportunity to teach them a lesson as an elder, it was simply more disgusting than eating a mosquito. What was more speechless was that they could only pinch their noses and endure, unable to do anything. Thinking like this, the 3 of them immediately complained incessantly in their hearts, and their intestines turned green with regret. As for Zhao Qianru from the Imperial Capital's immortal planet Bodhi Technology, Yuan Zhua from Celestial Biotech, and Dongfeng Lin from Shenong Biotech, after exchanging glances, they helplessly sighed. They could not blame Xian, but they hated Tuoba Linfeng. If this time they really suffered in front of Xian and were treated like a junior, this debt would definitely be put on Tuoba Linfeng's head. It was all because of this kid that they were implicated. Chapter 32-38. Dragon Liver and Phoenix Marrow Feast. Seeing Xian nod in agreement, Tuoba Xiong, Gongyang Buhui, and Changyu Jinglong immediately beamed with joy. They originally thought that this young Master Linghu would not be easy to deal with. After all, the other party had suddenly returned to Heaven Battle Planet at this time. It was impossible to say that he did not know anything about what had happened more than 2,000 years ago. Perhaps he had already regarded the 3 families as his enemies. After all, although the 3 families did not make a public appearance, the ones who benefited the most from the fall of the Linghu family were the Tuoba family, Gongyang family, and Changyu family, so there was bound to be some suspicion. But now, this guy who called himself young Master Linghu did not show the slightest bit of suspicion. Either this person did not suspect them at all, or this person was too shrewd and was a difficult character to deal with. They would rather believe that it was the latter. Therefore, after the 3 of them secretly exchanged glances, they had already made a tacit decision. Once they entered the core area of the Medicine King's remains, no matter what, they had to get their fellow tribesmen to get rid of this person as soon as possible to prevent future trouble. They were quite confident that they could do that. After all, although the Linghu bloodline had half of the King of Medicine's inheritance and had amazing achievements in the field of alchemy, the young master of the Linghu bloodline, who was born in this generation, was only a third-order black hole. He was too weak and had no resistance at all. He could only be killed. At this time it was not late. Since Xian had agreed to stay with the Tuoba family for 10 days, participate in the Medicine King's summit 3 days later, and then explore the Medicine King's ruins 10 days later, Tuoba Xiong, as the host, naturally had to do his part. He immediately smiled and invited Xian to the Tuoba family's banquet, and the other masters of the 15 great families would follow along. The large banquet hall had a total of 4 tables. The 16 family heads and Xian sat at the first table. Below them were 3 tables in a row. One table was for Tuoba Linfeng and the other heirs of the 16 great families, while the other 2 tables were for the backbone of the great families. Each table could seat 20 people, and it was a very large round table, very impressive. Seeing Xian sitting at the first table with the patriarchs, Tuoba Linfeng and the others below had gloomy expressions on their faces. There was nothing they could do about it. They were in a bad mood, so they might as well not see it and not look over there. Only Shen Yuanziying would occasionally turn her head to glance at Yi Xian, who was at the first table. In Tuoba Linfeng's eyes, he thought that she had taken a fancy to Yi Xian, causing him to become even more depressed. The table full of good wine and dishes had all turned into the same taste in his mouth. It was like chewing wax. There was no difference. Sigh. After eating a few mouthfuls, Yi Xian suddenly sighed and put down his chopsticks with a look of disinterest. Tuoba Xiong, who was chatting with him, was startled. He suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart, but as the host, it was inappropriate to not ask when the guest suddenly became like this. Thus he braced himself and asked, "Little friend Ling Hu, what's wrong? Could it be that the dishes are not to your taste? My Tuoba family's private kitchen is the best in Heaven Battle Planet. It's not the chef's problem. In fact, this chef is really amazing. The cooking skills in his hands can be said to be magical. These simple ingredients that are not on the table can be made into so many different styles. This kind of taste is really rare. It really is worthy of being called the Tuoba family's private kitchen." These words were said in a very negative way, but Yi Xian was so serious and straightforward that no one could tell if he was doing it on purpose. In short, Tuoba Xiong's old face turned green and his eyelids twitched. However, Yi Xian didn't stop and continued to say, "Everyone, continue to eat. Don't worry about me. I will accompany you first. If you are really hungry later, you can go to the Clear River Pavilion. Although the braised subservient dragon liver there is not good, at least I can eat it and barely cope with it. Besides, it's not like I have to eat every meal. As a cultivator, sometimes when the conditions are not good enough, it's normal for me to cultivate for a few days without eating. Don't worry about me, I'm embarrassed." Hearing this, the masters of the top clans were all stunned. Although the ingredients on this table weren't as rare as the subservient dragon liver, it was still not bad. However, from the words of this chef, it was clear that he was used to eating dragon liver and phoenix marrow feasts. He couldn't even bear to eat a little. If there wasn't dragon liver and phoenix marrow, he would rather not eat it and just treat it as cultivation. As for the table below, Zhao Qianru from Bodhi Technology, Yuan Zhua from Celestial Biotech, and Dongfeng Lin from Shenong Biotech exchanged glances with each other with strange expressions on their faces. Shen Yuanziying's eyelids twitched as she subconsciously stole a glance at Yi Xian. She suddenly felt the suspicion in her heart grow even stronger. This style was becoming more and more similar to that of a shameless person. Tuoba Linfeng was so angry that his face turned green. This was clearly tearing down the Tuoba family's reputation in front of everyone. What did he mean by the chef's cooking skills were amazing and could turn something rotten into something magical? After all this time, the banquet that the Tuoba family used to entertain the masters of the top 15 clans was all rotten ingredients? This kid's words were too infuriating. He simply wanted to strangle him to death on the spot to vent his anger. In fact, Tuoba Xiong was a little suspicious that Yi Xian was deliberately embarrassing him at this moment. However, it didn't seem like it at all on the surface. He was just so boorish. Besides, he did order a table of the best banquet in the Clear River Pavilion alone, including the braised subservient dragon liver. For that meal, he directly threw out a level 9 colored star core. He couldn't have been planning for this scene at that time, right? This was clearly not possible. Going to a banquet alone and throwing out a level 9 colored star core could only mean that he was a prodigal. Back then, the remnants of the Linghu bloodline did take away a lot of resources, which was enough for the young master of the main bloodline to squander. It seemed that this was a habit that he had long since developed. But even so, it was in the Linghu family. Now this was the Tuoba family. Perhaps no one would tolerate this prodigal young master's temper. Thinking of this, Tuoba Xiong immediately persuaded with a fake smile. "Linghu, my young friend, I advise you to eat some. Even if you go back to the Clear River Pavilion, I'm afraid you won't be able to eat that dish. The subservient dragon is not easy to hunt. Only adult subservient dragons can be eaten. They are the supreme fierce beasts of the Tao Insight realm. Even in the Clear River Pavilion, it takes a long time to hunt one. It doesn't matter. Don't worry. As long as I go there, they will definitely find a way to hunt one to satisfy me." Yi Xian sneered in his heart, but his face showed a big smile. He winked at Tuoba Xiong and lowered his voice. "Tuoba family head, have you forgotten? This time, there are 20 places to enter the relics. Except for me and your 16 families, there are 17 places in total. There are 3 more places. At most we can give them all to them. It's not a problem to exchange for 3 servings of dragon liver. Chapter 32-39. What kind of father was this? Hearing Yi Xian's idea, not only Tuoba Xiong, but also Gongyang Buhui and Changyu Jinglong wanted to curse him. Indeed, there were 3 more spots, but regarding this matter, they had already discussed it with the other clan masters of the top aristocratic families. It just so happened that the 3 of them would each receive 1. As the host, the Tuoba family provided the Medicine King's steel and took the initiative to share the Medicine King's remains with everyone. They were fully qualified to do so, and the other clan masters of the top aristocratic families also agreed. There was no reason to pick them. But now, 3 portions of braised sub-blood dragon liver. The prodigal son in front of them actually wanted to give them to the Clear River Pavilion. If that was the case, wouldn't it mean that the Clear River Pavilion could send 3 people this time? At that time, when they entered the core area of the remains, they would be the only one. They were afraid that the Medicine King's inheritance in the core area would fall into the hands of the Clear River Pavilion. Thinking of this possibility, Tuoba Xiong, Gongyang Buhui and Changyu Jinglong suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, this prodigal son was straightforward and said it out loud. Otherwise, he would directly go to the Clear River Pavilion to finish the deal without saying anything. At that time, even if Tuoba Xiong, Gongyang Buhui and Changyu Jinglong wanted to deny it, they couldn't. The pavilion master of the Clear River Pavilion was too mysterious. Even the current crown prince of the Heavenly War Empire didn't dare to offend him, not to mention them. Even if Yi Xian generously exchanged their benefits for the braised sub-blood dragon liver, they couldn't compete with the Clear River Pavilion at all. They could only pinch their noses and accept it. They wouldn't be so sad even if they were f***ed by a dog. After so much trouble, it was all for the Clear River Pavilion. Thinking of this, Tuoba Xiong immediately made a decision. He turned around and glanced at Gongyang Buhui and Changyu Jinglong beside him, gritting his teeth and saying, "2 fellow cultivators, no matter what, we are the hosts after all. It's rare for you to come to the Heavenly War planet. How about we share the braised sub-blood dragon liver?" It wasn't that he was trying to share the burden, but that the 3 families had already formed an alliance. Since the benefits were shared after the matter was settled, why should the Tuoba family be responsible for all 3 portions of braised subservient dragon liver? An adult sub-blood dragon was a grotto heaven realm beast. Hunting such an existence would result in death. Moreover, it wasn't just any small fish or shrimp that would die. It was very likely that a grotto heaven realm elder of the clan would die. The faces of Gongyang Buhui and Changyu Jinglong turned green. The price of losing an elder of the Tao Insight realm was too great. However, if they did not agree, the good fortune in the Medicine King's relic might be taken by the Clear River Pavilion. In the end, the 2 of them turned their heads and exchanged a look. In the end, they gritted their teeth and agreed. They was could not to be translation? Of the to be was to be as was to was to were to was to be to the of was of the family is of? As is? This guy is definitely a jinx. With just a few words, Tuoba, Gongyang, and Changyu, the top 3 families of the Heaven Warring Planets, would most likely lose a Heavenly Passage Realm Elder. This was simply unimaginable. He had even squandered his family's wealth on other people's side. This was truly a source of calamity. Oh, my fellow Taoist Tuoba, you're too polite. It's not easy to kill a sub-blood dragon. Braised sub-blood dragon liver is a top-grade dragon liver, which can only be picked from an adult sub-blood dragon. That's a supreme fierce beast at the Tao Insight realm. Even if you have a hunting method, it's still very dangerous. Yi Xian rejoiced in his heart, but on the surface, he appeared to be very polite and moved. As he spoke, he picked up his chopsticks again and ate heartily. All of a sudden, his appetite returned. "All right, Tuoba family head, if you really want to hunt the hornless dragon, can you leave the 3 hornless dragon horns for me? As you all know, the hornless dragon's horn can be used in medicine. Recently, this young master has been researching the level 10 gene cultivation fluid. The hornless dragon's horn should come in handy." Puff! Hearing this, Tuoba Xiong wanted to spit out blood again. This guy even wants the hornless dragon's horn? And 3 of them? It should be known that half of the reason why he agreed to this was because of the 3 hornless dragon's horn. The level 10 gene cultivation fluid did need the hornless dragon's horn. Although the amount was very small,
The Tuoba family's technology of making level 10 gene cultivation fluid was not very stable. Therefore, the consumption of the hornless dragon's horn was not small. Previously, the 2 hornless dragon's horn in the collection of the clan were almost used up. They could only make 3 bottles of level 10 gene cultivation fluid. If they hunted 3 subblood dragons this time, at least the consumption of the hornless dragon's horn would be guaranteed when they made level 10 gene cultivation fluid in the future. If this guy got all the hornless dragon's horn, the clan would risk losing an elder of the Tao Insight realm. Thinking of this, Tuoba Xiong gritted his teeth and hesitated for a long time. Then he said with hatred, "My young friend, our Tuoba family also needs the hornless dragon's horn, and it's an urgent need. So, I can only give you 1.5. Deal." How shameless. Tuoba Xiong suddenly did not want to see this guy's shameless face anymore. He stood up with grief and indignation. "Enjoy your meal, everyone. I suddenly feel a little pain in my liver, so I won't accompany you any longer." Then, he flicked his sleeves and left. "My young friend, are you studying level 10 gene cultivation fluid?" As soon as Tuoba Xiong left, Yuan Changfeng, the leader of the celestial master creature from the immortal star, immediately looked at Yi Xian with shining eyes. "Ha ha ha. Linghu, my young friend, is really talented. If you want to study level 10 gene cultivation fluid, you must have the foundation of level 9 gene cultivation fluid. I didn't expect that in addition to the 3 top families of the immortal star and the new Tuoba family, there would be a 5th expert who can make level 9 gene cultivation fluid. Congratulations." Duanmu Liangling, the leader of the Duanmu family from the Heavenly Wind Empire's Heavenly Wind Star, also took over the conversation. As he spoke, he winked at Yi Xian. Stroking his beard, he said, "My young friend, you should not have a family yet, right? It just so happens that I want to find a son-in-law." "Oh right, my daughter Duanmu Xiaocha is sitting at that table over there. You should have already met her. She is absolutely a heavenly beauty. My young friend, you are worthy of having her." "Bah bah bah. You shameless old man, pimping this old man's son-in-law. This is the good son-in-law of the Shenyuan family. Old man Duanmu, don't you have any shame?" Hearing Duanmu Liangling's words, the leader of the Shenyuan family was so anxious that his beard trembled. He put down his chopsticks and was about to explode on the spot. "Old Shenyuan, who the hell are you calling a pimp? You shameless old man. You dare to say such shameless words in front of the younger generation." Duanmu Liangling was so angry that he almost spat out blood. Seeing that the table was about to be flipped on the spot, the purplish warbler and Duanmu Xiaocha at the other table subconsciously looked at each other. For a moment, they felt that they were in the same boat. Their faces were full of shame and anger, and they couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in immediately. Chapter 3240. Dear nephews, after the banquet, the patriarchs and leaders of the top families temporarily left. As for Yi Xian, he'd just been led by the Tuoba family's butler to a quiet small courtyard to stay in. Finally, it was quiet. Yi Xian immediately set up a defensive barrier and began to check the ancient tablet of the Medicine King that was suspended above his sea of consciousness. What made him slightly disappointed was that although the ancient tablet had recognized its owner, no matter how Yi Xian tried to activate it, it remained indifferent. The only information Yi Xian could obtain from the ancient tablet was the hundreds of millions of herbs in the first 3 stages, as well as the minerals that could be used as medicine, the materials from the ominous beasts, and the details of their medicinal properties. All of this was meaningless to him, because the information from the devouring system had already been copied and stored in the central database of the system. If he wanted to check this information, Yi Xian could directly retrieve it from the central database of the devouring system, which was much more convenient and faster than obtaining the information from the ancient tablet of the Medicine King. It seems that this ancient tablet of the Medicine King is really just a key. With it, I can enter the core of the Medicine King's remains. The so-called Medicine King's inheritance will have to be fought for after I enter. Muttering to himself, Yi Xian could not help but sigh faintly. No wonder Tuoba Xiong was so generous and allowed me to refine this ancient tablet of the Medicine King. To them, this is just a key. As long as the person who holds the key is in their hands, it will be fine. If I want to obtain the real Medicine King's inheritance, I will have to go through a lot of fighting. Of the 20 spots, I'll take 1, the 16 top-notch clans will take 1 each, and the remaining 3 should be Tuoba clan, Gongyang clan, and Chongyu clan's 3 clans. If there is no accident,
The three families should have already secretly formed an alliance. That is to say, when the time comes to enter the core of the Medicine King's remains, the three families will have 6 Black Hole Realm Juniors. Even if the other 13 great families cooperate, it is impossible for there to be 6 of them. That way, even the distribution of benefits will not be decided. If there are no accidents, at most 2 or 3 of the other 13 top families have reached a cooperation agreement. No matter what, on the surface, it looks like the Tuoba family has the upper hand. The Medicine King's inheritance is theirs. It's a pity that Tuoba Xiong, Gongyang Buhui, and Changyu Jinglong made a mistake. In their eyes, I might be the least threatening one since I'm only a rank 3 black hole. But in reality? Hee hee. 6 black hole realm experts? I can use it to train my hands. When the time comes, I'll put on my battle armor and wield my battle weapons, both of which are quasi-starry sky supreme treasures. On top of that, I'll have the Fallen Heaven Bow's ability. Thinking of this, Yi Xian grinned and said, I'm really looking forward to this battle. After putting this matter aside for the time being, Yi Xian withdrew his divine sense from his knowledge sea and began to focus on studying the billions of new medicinal herbs, minerals, and dire beast materials that had been added to the Devouring System Central Database. Not only did the 3 stages of the Medicine King's tablet completely update the Devouring System Central Database in this regard, but it also allowed Yi Xian to see a new path of gene fluid research, which gave him a lot of inspiration. Although the gene fluid required countless medicinal herbs and dire beast materials in all kinds of ratios and variations, the various top families had explored for many years and gradually developed their own methods to form a system of secret arts and secret recipes. However, in Yi Xian's opinion, even if he had just started using an unorthodox method, he would not necessarily fall behind because he had the immortal rank superbrain. Its calculation ability was too strong. With such a treasure in hand, it was equivalent to having the most powerful computer in the current starry sky environment. In terms of the research of gene fluids, Yi Xian had an innate advantage that none of the other top-notch families possessed. Although there was also an immortal rank superbrain in the immortal star, and it was a mature one, that immortal rank superbrain bore the important mission of being the intelligence center of the immortal star dynasty's level 1 star network. How could it have the time to calculate gene fluid formulas for the top families of the 3 immortal stars? Bodhi technology, celestial worthy creatures, and Shenong gene? Therefore, Yi Xian, who had a growth-grade immortal rank superbrain, definitely had a calculation ability in the field of gene fluid research that far surpassed the 16 great families. As long as he got started, he might really be able to concoct the level 11 gene fluid before the Tuoba family. With this kind of expectation, Yi Xian quickly immersed himself in the research, starting from the configuration of the level 1 gene fluid and becoming intoxicated. Early the next morning, as soon as Yi Xian woke up, the head housekeeper of the Tuoba family had already led 2 servants to deliver breakfast. What he said at the banquet last night was indeed effective. Although it was only breakfast, the ingredients were extremely extraordinary. It was a light porridge made from top-grade ingredients from dire beasts. Yi Xian ate it with great satisfaction. He felt a warm current flowing down his throat into his stomach, and in an instant, it turned into a burning energy, causing his body to resonate with the sound of his flesh and blood cells struggling to break free from their shackles. Of course, a bowl of top-grade dire beasts ingredient porridge was far from enough to make him directly break through the realm in terms of blood and qi, but there was no doubt that there was an improvement. Yi Xian couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, this kind of great family was the best. If he could eat this kind of energy porridge made from top-grade dire beasts ingredient every day, over time, he would be able to accumulate a certain amount of blood and qi and improve the realm. If this kind of thought was known by the head of the Tuoba family, Tuoba Xiong, he was afraid that he would spurt out blood on the spot. This bowl of light porridge made from dire beasts ingredient was very expensive, and even he was reluctant to eat it. It was completely to appease Yi Xian, fearing that he would have the idea of taking 3 places to go to the Clear River Pavilion to eat, so he endured the pain and sent it over. Yi Xian actually wanted to eat it every day. If he really did that, he was afraid that in less than a year, the entire Tuoba family would be eaten by him. Just after breakfast, Tuoba Linfeng, the purplish warbler, and the other heirs of the great families came together with bitter faces. In addition to the 16 people who had already seen yesterday, there were 3 more fellows today, following behind Tuoba Linfeng, Gong Yangji, and Changyu Xiaotian. They must be the new candidates of the Tuoba family, who were also in the Black Hole realm. There were a total of 19 people. Including Yi Xian, there were exactly 20 people.
This group of people should be the younger generation of the great families that would enter the Medicine King's remains in 9 days. The reason why they came together early in the morning was because the other 13 families wanted to be on good terms with Xian. After all, apart from refining the Medicine King's ancient tablet and holding the key to enter the core of the Medicine King's remains, Xian's terrifying talent in alchemy was also favored by them. The Shenyuan family and Duanmu family also wanted to recruit a son-in-law. As for the Tuoba family, Gongyang family, and Changyu family, they hoped that this group of young people would pester Xian and divert his attention, hoping that he would not only think about eating all day. Even if he did not go to the Clear River Pavilion, what if he ate all day in the Tuoba family? He could not stand it. Chapter 32:41. The main character has arrived in the next 2 days, including the Purplish Warbler, 19 of the top clan successors and Heaven's Prides, under the pressure of their elders, gritted their teeth and patiently accompanied Xian. They were called nephew and niece by him, and their days were bleak. At this time, they finally deeply realized how shameless and hateful this young master Linghu was. Fortunately, Xian did not pay special attention to the other clan successors, except for the Tuoba, Gongyang, and Changyu clans. In these 2 days, Tuoba Linfeng, Gongyang Ji, and Changyu Xiaotian had lost a lot of weight, and their spirits were somewhat absent-minded. It was as if they had been tormented to the point of leaving a psychological shadow. Whenever they heard the name Linghu, they would tremble and tremble. Their miserable appearance was simply tear-jerking. In addition, at noon on the second day, the Tuoba clan served a large plate of braised sub-blood dragon liver and placed it in front of Xian. Tuoba Xiong's eyes were red, and he simply could not eat. In order to hunt this sub-blood dragon, the Tuoba clan dispatched 3 Heavenly Passage Realm Elders. In the end, one of them was seriously injured. Although no one died, that elder was Tuoba Xiong's uncle. For the King of Medicine's inheritance, they were obviously going all out. The leaders and clan masters of the other top clans had also heard about this. In their eyes, this plate of braised sub-blood dragon liver was something that the elder of the Tuoba clan had sacrificed half of his life in exchange for. So, who would have the nerve to eat it? In the end, Xian ate alone with a mouth full of oil. This mature sub-blood dragon was a powerful ominous beast that had just entered the Heavenly Passage realm. Its whole body's essence was in 2 places, the dragon's horn and the dragon's liver. The former could not be eaten and could only be used as medicine, while the latter was a top-grade ingredient. Furthermore, because this hornless dragon was killed on the same day and its liver was braised, the loss of energy in the hornless dragon's liver was relatively small. Once the entire hornless dragon's liver entered his stomach, Xian instantly felt as if his entire body had fallen into a huge furnace and was being roasted. This was also because he had just eaten a serving of sub-blood hornless dragon's liver yesterday. Although it had been sitting there for 3 days and its energy had been depleted, the energy of 2 servings of hornless dragon's liver was not to be underestimated. Before the others finished eating, he finished the plate of braised hornless dragon's liver alone and immediately left in a hurry. He went to the small courtyard where he stayed to cultivate. Half an hour later, a beam of red light shot into the sky from Xian's courtyard, accompanied by Xian's hearty laughter. Ha ha ha! Awesome! It was so satisfying. I ate until my mouth was dripping with oil and I accidentally broke through. Now, my cultivation base in terms of vitality force is already a rank 4 black hole. There are still 2 more plates of hornless dragon's liver tomorrow and the day after. At least I can break through one more time and become a rank 5 black hole in the blink of an eye. Sigh. Tuoba family's head is really a good person. If I can stay here for a long time, I won't go anywhere if I have a plate of hornless dragon's liver every day. Hearing this hearty laughter, the faces of the other top families in the banquet hall immediately turned green. Even old man Duanmu and the head of the Shenyuan family, who originally wanted to recruit a son-in-law, suddenly came to their senses and immediately dismissed the idea. This guy was clearly a top-notch foodie. Fortunately, he realized it in time. Otherwise, if he really brought him back to the clan as a son-in-law, he would probably eat up the entire clan in less than a year. Thinking of this, old man Duanmu and the head of the Shenyuan family looked at each other subconsciously. They both thought to themselves that it was a close call, and cold sweat dripped down their backs. Humph. This old man has a bit of liver pain today, so I won't accompany you all. Enjoy your meal. Tuoba Xiong gritted his teeth. Since last night's banquet, he hadn't eaten a single grain of rice. He really couldn't eat anymore, and his heart was bleeding. When he walked to the entrance of the banquet hall,
He suddenly thought of something and stopped. He turned around and looked at Gongyang Buhui and Changyu Jinglong. 2 old friends. There are still 9 days left. You can discuss how to supply 2 meals of hornless dragon's liver. Don't do it consecutively. It's better to do it a few days apart. Otherwise, if we get addicted to it, we really can't handle it. After saying that, he flicked his sleeves and left with a face full of grief and indignation. At the same time, in the void of the galaxy millions of miles away from the capital of the Heavenly War Empire, the Heavenly War Planet, a fleet of merchant ships was slowly approaching. Their target was the Heavenly War Planet. This fleet of merchant ships wasn't a fleet of the human clan of the Third Universe. Judging from the emblems on the merchant ships, they were clearly from the Barbarian Bull clan of the Second Universe. The Barbarian Bull clan was also one of the clans of the Federation of the Second Universe. They had been trading with the human clan of the Third Universe for a long time. Through the planar-level universe wormhole, the merchant fleets of the 2 universes could communicate with each other. This had been very common since tens of thousands of years ago. Therefore, when the merchant fleet of the Barbarian Bull clan arrived, the patrol ships of the Heavenly War Empire didn't have any excessive reaction. They just did a routine inspection and directly let them go. At this time, several figures were standing on the flagship of the fleet. The one in the lead was a young human man with an imposing appearance. He was quite extraordinary. His cultivation realm had also reached the peak of the rank 9 black hole. In addition to this young human man in the black hole realm, there were several human powerhouses standing behind him, as well as several powerhouses of the Barbarian Bull clan with bullhorns on their heads. One of the powerhouses of the Barbarian Bull clan even had the cultivation of the Grotto Heaven realm. He was extremely powerful. Even so, he still stood behind the young human man in the peak of the rank 9 black hole realm like a follower. This showed that this young human man must have an extraordinary origin and must have a big force behind him. In the environment of the starry sky, it was basically impossible for a rogue cultivator to subdue someone stronger than him as a servant. Following someone whose cultivation was stronger than himself, the only explanation was that there was a huge force behind him. Young Master, we have connected to the level 2 star network of the Heavenly War Planet. The basic situation is similar to what we have learned before. The Tuoba clan has indeed successfully formulated the level 10 gene cultivation fluid. The reason why their research on the gene cultivation fluid has advanced by leaps and bounds is indeed because they have obtained some benefits from the Medicine King's relics that were originally controlled by my Linghu clan. The Medicine King's tablet, which is the key to open the core of the Medicine King's relics, has been taken out by Tuoba Xiong. At this time, another old man of the human clan hurried over and stood aside with his hands clasped behind his back. He reported to the young human powerhouse that he had just learned, but this is not the main point. The main point is that after Tuoba Xiong took the Medicine King's tablet out of the Medicine King's relics, he set it up in the Tuoba Square so that anyone could challenge it. As a result, just yesterday, this tablet was passed 3 times by a young black hole realm powerhouse, and he passed it perfectly. He has already been recognized as its master. This person is now in the Tuoba clan and is being treated as a distinguished guest. And this person is called Linghu Chong, and he calls himself Young Master Linghu. This is clearly using your identity. Gotcha. Chapter 3242. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio Universe 2 Een Demon Clan. The young expert's name was Linghu Ju. He was the true young master of the Linghu clan. In fact, it was possible to say that he was the clan leader of the Linghu bloodline. That was because his father had passed away many years ago. The entire Linghu bloodline that had escaped from the Heaven Battle Planet had long since obeyed Linghu Ju's orders. He had become the leader of the Linghu bloodline. The young master of the Linghu clan, who had escaped from the Heaven Battle Planet, was Linghu Ju's father. More than 2,000 years ago, before Linghu Ju was born, the Linghu clan was the only clan in the entire dynasty that could concoct a level 9 fluid. Even the Bodhi technology, celestial worthy creatures, and Shinnong genes of the imperial capital's immortal planet could only concoct a level 8 fluid. The Shenyuan, Huangfu, and Nangong clans of the Heavenly Dark Empire, the Duanmu, Wu Ma, and Shinta clans of the Heavenly Wind Empire, and the Tuoba, Gongyang, and Changyu clans of the Heavenly War Empire could only concoct a level 7 fluid. It could be said that the Linghu clan was the only clan at that time. In the field of gene cultivation fluid research, they were even more envious than the Tuoba clan, who had just launched a level 10 fluid. Because of this, the Heavenly War Empire had joined forces with the Tuoba, Gongyang, and Jianghu clans of the Heaven Battle Planet to destroy the entire Linghu clan overnight. It was said that the Immortal Dynasty was behind this, but this matter had not been confirmed. However, there were some clues that could prove it. Because without the Imperial Dynasty's participation, the Heavenly War Empire alone would not have been able to affect the three empires of the Imperial Dynasty. The secondary star networks of the three empires, as well as the secondary star networks of the various countries within their territories, could not find any information related to the Linghu clan. This time, Linghu Ju had come back for revenge. Originally, he wasn't ready. According to the original plan, he fled to the Linghu clan in the second universe. He needed to recuperate for more than 1,000 years. Only then would he have the confidence to return to the third universe and come to the Heaven Warring Planet to eradicate the Tuoba clan, the Gong clan, and the Longfish clan in one fell swoop. From then on, they once again gained the upper hand and became the most powerful existence in the gene cultivation fluid field in the entire Heaven Battle Planet and even in the entire Undying Dynasty. As long as this kind of momentum was formed, even if the Heavenly Battle Empire and even the Eternal Dynasty had their suspicions, as long as Linghu Ju pretended not to know the truth of what happened back then and only pointed the spearhead at the Heavenly Battle Planet's three great families, the Empire and Dynasty would most likely tolerate their existence for the time being due to the powerful genetic fluid research ability in their hands. This way, Linghu Ju could secretly set up his plans. They would use time to slowly erode the Empire until they were finally destroyed. From then on, they would have the strength and capital to contend with the dynasty. From this, one could see how great his ambition was and how intense his hatred was. His target wasn't just the Heaven Battle Planet's three greatest gene fluid clans, but even the Heaven Battle Empire and the entire Immortal Dynasty. Of course, if it was only to destroy the Heavenly War Empire, even if they replaced it, they definitely wouldn't have the strength to contend against the entire Everlasting Empire. But Linghu Ju was not worried, because he had other trump cards, and that was the various races of the second universe. Back then, the reason why the Linghu family was able to rise so quickly and had the ability to concoct the 9th-level genetic fluid was because they had discovered the Medicine King's ruins near the Heavenly Battle Planet. At the periphery of the Medicine King's ruins, half of the Medicine King's inheritance was obtained by the Linghu family, allowing them to have the ability to concoct the 9th-level genetic fluid. It was also because of this that they attracted a fatal disaster. Later on, the young master of the Linghu family escaped with a batch of resources and went to the second universe. There, he rested for more than 2,000 years and carefully studied the half of the Medicine King's incomplete book. Today, the Linghu family had successfully concocted the 11th level genetic fluid not long ago. Compared to the Tuoba family who had just discovered the Medicine King's ruins and used it to concoct the 10th level genetic fluid, they were even more powerful in this field. Because of this, Linghu Ju and the two great races of the second universe had secretly reached a strategic cooperation. On the surface, the one who cooperated with them was the Barbarian Bull clan, which was one of the races of the second universe's federation. The first race was the Een Demon clan. Although the Een Demon clan was also a race of the second universe, they had not joined the Myriad Luo Federation. There were many other races in the second universe, but not all of them had joined the Myriad Luo Federation. Although joining the Federation was the general trend, there were also some powerful races that were unable and unwilling to join the Federation for some special reasons. The Een Demon clan was one of them. It could be said that Linghu Ju had secretly allied with the two great races of the second universe. The support behind him was extremely powerful. If he could destroy the Heavenly Battle Empire, coupled with the support from the second universe, he would have the qualifications to fight against the Immortal Dynasty. At present, the situation of the Federation was very tense. Because of the Tenju Heavenly Palace of the Cultivation Camp, the races of the second universe's Federation were showing signs of breaking off with the Federation. It was because of this general trend, coupled with the shocking news that the Tuoba family had successfully developed the 10th level genetic fluid, that Linghu Ju suspected that the Medicine King's ruins in the star field near the Heavenly Battle Planet had been exposed. As a result, he had no choice but to take action 1,000 years in advance. He brought a Barbarian Bull clan fleet disguised as a merchant fleet from the second universe to the Heavenly Battle Empire. In fact, this fleet was a powerful battle fleet. Aside from the Barbarian Bull clan experts that appeared as merchants, there were also a large number of Een Demon clan experts hidden in the fleet. This time, Linghu Ju had two goals for mobilizing the Heavenly Battle Planet. First, enter the Medicine King's ruins, enter the core area, and obtain the complete inheritance of the Medicine King. Second, destroy the Tuoba, Gongyang, and Jianghu clans, and use the name of Ling Hu Ju to establish a foothold in the heavenly battle planet. Then pretend that he did not know the truth of the destruction of his clans and feign civility with the heavenly battle empire, slowly plotting. But now, he had traveled hundreds of millions of miles from the second universe, and before he even reached the heavenly battle planet, he actually heard that someone had used his identity as the young master of the Ling Hu clan to stir up trouble in the heavenly battle planet. Not only did this person take the opportunity to refine the Medicine King's ancient tablet, which was equivalent to the key to the core area of the ruins, he even used his identity as the young master of the Ling Hu clan to become an honored guest of the Tuoba clan. If this matter were to be known by the ancestors of the Ling Hu clan, they would be so angry that they would crawl out of their graves on the spot. Damned bastard, not only did he use this young master's identity, he even went to this young master's enemy's house to become an honored guest. This is clearly the rhythm of smearing feces on this young master's face. At this moment, Ling Hu Ju was about to explode from anger. He, who had always been calm and low-key, had completely gone berserk. Thinking about it, it was actually understandable. He originally came here full of ambition, but unexpectedly, before he even entered the heavenly battle planet, he received such news. Anyone would find it hard to accept in such a short time. Damned bastard, Ling Hu Chong, right? If this young master does not kill you, I am not a human. Ling Hu Ju was enraged and roared towards the sky. Ah!